Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. In the years to come, after he had replaced his father as head of the house and defender of Old Town, Baelor Hightower would often entertain his grandchildren, great-nieces, and nephews with their favorite tale. No matter how many times they heard the story, the little ones always asked the same questions. Did you know? Did you suspect the truth? Baelor would shake his head. He had no inkling, and if they were honest, neither did anyone else. Perhaps they should have. After all, that first night, an omen appeared in the sky. The roads in the eastern riverlands were in poor condition. From Maidenpool to Saltpans, the dirt tracks were heavily rutted and pocked with weeds. In many stretches, the passage was narrow and uneven, and only 2 horses could ride abreast. The twisty, windy road would have been a problem during the day, but at night, the ride to Harroway was far more dangerous. There were sinkholes and bogs and piles of stone that had been scattered by rain and wind. Sero Baelor would have balked at Garland's command. But for the moon, a great red moon hung in the sky, a bright disk of blood, a knight hailing from Horn Hill called it a hunter's moon, that followed the harvest when animals had gorged themselves in the valleys, hills, and forests. Such a moon rose later in the night so that sunset and moonrise were close, allowing more hours for farmers to glean fields and hunters to track prey. Baelor did not trust the explanation. He had lived a long time and never seen any moon so large. Harvest and hunter moons were no brighter than others, yet the blood moon lit up the sky, casting fearful shadows. Do you think it means war? A bleeding star appeared before the wolves and the lions battled. Lord Costain asked nervously. His house was one of 5 sworn to Old Town. Fighting in the Riverlands started before the comet appeared. The mountain already raided the Red Fork, and the Kingslayer smashed the Tallies at River Run. Thoros would know. The Red Priest had been tasked by Ned Stark to bring Gregor Clegane to justice. In King's Landing they call the star King Joffrey's Comet, an Oakhart man said. The small folk believe the red honors the crimson of House Lannister. That's what the servants say when highborns ask. Small folk don't really believe that nonsense. The wolves kick the Lannisters' arses, and now a plague rages in King's Landing. The stars have nothing to do with Joffrey unless one of them is pissing on his head. Thoros added. As the tracks met the King's Road, Baelor looked up at the giant blood moon. A moon is not a star. The maesters taught me that much. A star with a bleeding tail might herald war, but this moon is only red and bright. We should be glad that it lights our way in the dark. The 12 horsemen galloped north on the King's Road. Besides Thoros, these were all men of the Reach, and they rode hard through the night, under the red moon. They arrived at Harroway the next morning. A squad of men-at-arms, carrying a banner of the burning White Tower, greeted them near the 2-story Dob and Wattle Inn. The tired horses were led to a stable by the ostler and his 2 boys. As small folk gaped and gawked, more Hightower soldiers emerged from the Round Tower. The docks and the hills overlooking the Trident. Shara, your raven arrived yesterday afternoon. We sent 30 outriders to the nearby villages, with instructions to bring back merchants and craftsmen by noon. The sergeant said, Good. Inform Lord Rote of my arrival at the inn. Send the other knights to me and make sure the horses are fed and watered. Some men may have to go further north or west. Yes, search. In name, Harroway was the seat of House Root, an insignificant noble house. In reality, Baelor controlled the town, his 500 men outnumbering House Root's 12. Harroway sat on the river, less than 5 miles downriver from the junction of the 3 forks. Before the battle at the Red Fork, the nearby bridges had been destroyed to force the Westermen to cross at a single point. Half a year later, the bridges were still unrepaired and impassable to heavy wagons. Here the Trident was wide but calm, and a ferry with 2 carved horse heads traveled back and forth. The Reachmen broke their fast on porridge with honey and butter, loaves of bread baked with dried apples and hard-boiled eggs. Baelor listened to his captains about news concerning the Riverlands. The outriders returned, bringing back a motley group, merchants, elders, gentry, healers, and children. Lord Root arrived with the Septon, passing through the small folk gathered outside. Finally, when the sun was high, Baelor rose. Before he said a word, a tall girl called out, Are the rumors true, sir? Did Snow cure the plague? He was not surprised that the story had spread. More than one raven left Maidenpool yesterday. Yes, it is true. There is a cure. The room exploded. Lord Roates looked at his septon with shock. How is that possible? You said the bastard would die due to his heresy. The faith only claimed that he was being punished for blasphemy against the seven-pointed star. He violated the dead. A scowling septon replied, Snow was wounded badly with a crossbow. For 3 days he was unconscious. When he rose, he found a cure, but the plague is not over. A tall, muscled boy with thick black hair moved forward. What does that mean, me lord? Baelor did not fully understand what Snow had done, but then neither did the maesters. The cure is difficult to make. More work must be done. But what can we do? You must have come to Harroway for a reason, my lord. Snow wants empty barrels. He needs them to produce elixir, Baelor said. Barrels? What do barrels have to do with the plague? Has he gone mad? The septon asked. It doesn't matter why. If the bloody wolf wants barrels, then we bring him barrels. Do you want to tell him no? The boy turned back to Baelor. Did Snow say what size, my lord? The size that a strong man could carry, or even larger. He does not care whether they once held beer or wine, just that they are empty. The hard-faced girl who asked the first question spoke again. There is a journeyman cooper near the Ruby Ford. He is a hard worker. There are others at Fairmarket and Ramsford, but that is many days of travel on the Blue Fork, and the Blue Fork has overflowed its banks again. Gendry can make barrels too. He has repaired casks at the inn at the crossroads. How do you plan to bring the barrels back? By wagon, it will be at least a week to Maidenpool. Gendry said, That's the other reason we are Harroway. We will load them onto a ship and sail down the Trident. It will take only a day. Snow wanted the barrels yesterday. The quicker the better. Baelor did not need to say why. Time was running out. The day before his anointment as a knight, Garland Tyrell stood dutifully outside the Starry Sept. Barefoot and dressed in an undyed wool tunic, he had walked across the Honeywine into the great plaza where the statues of the Seven stood. In silence, he prayed and prayed, struggling to keep his eyes open, until many, many hours later the Septons blessed him with the 7 oils, and he buckled on his sword belt before swearing the vows before the warrior. That vigil had been a long night, but it was a blink of an eye compared to this. Jon Snow had woken up yesterday morning. After announcing the cure, he stumbled, like a man in his cups. The Northman was dazed from his ordeal and weak from the loss of blood. The little birds gave him hot broth and fresh bread, and changed the dressings on his wounds. Snow asked for clean clothes and water to wash. He relieved himself in the privy. Then he began. The hall in Florian's tower was divided now into 4 areas. Snow's desk occupied the center where he gave orders to healers and children. Another space was cleared near the staircase. The patients stayed behind curtains and screens on both sides of the long room. Everyone else was crowded in the front. That was where Garland waited, powerless to do anything. Stop pacing about. You are wearing down the stone. Lyanna munched on crackers and white cheese. The servant brought out a tray with hot lemon water and a small pot of honey. Lynette is receiving the elixir right now, grandmother, and Snow has forbidden me from seeing my wife, Garland complained. Jon explained why. When Lyanna wakes, she will be tired and confused. The Wintertown boys want her to be roused slowly, so there is no shock and risk to the child. That is why we cannot be there. They will call us when ready, Owen said. Are you certain it will work? Lyanna will be the first person that Snow cures, Olenna said. That is not true. Snow cured himself. The plague animalcules were in his blood, and now they are gone from his body. Owen said proudly, I cannot believe that the cure for the plague is mold. If I left this cheese out, would I be awarded a silver link? It is not the mold. Jon says it is the juice from the mold that fights disease. That juice grows apart from the mold, and in different quantities, it takes days to appear. That is why no one has discovered it before, and without the near eye, we could not see the effect. Owen said, Mold juice, that is why I am not a great healer. I eat my bread and cheese too quickly, the Queen of Thorns quipped. Grandmother, Garland said with some exasperation. Sir Garline, the Reachman turned to see Jon Snow standing in front of the wooden screen. Your wife is awake. Lyanna sat up on the bed, her face sallow and her brown hair brittle and dry. Her normally bright eyes were watery and red. matching the thin and sunken cheeks. The plague had scarred her arms, shoulders, and neck, with black and red marks. But the swelling from the bobios was gone. Garland rushed over to her side. He had never thought her more beautiful. "Stop, Garland! I do not want to get you ill," his wife cried. "That is unlikely unless you bleed on him. Your variant of the plague spreads through blood, and you are no longer sick," Snow said. Garland held her hand carefully and knelt by the bed. "Can that truly be the case? Full recovery takes time, but the plague bacterium in the bobios are dead or dying. She will need more elixir, but the lady is past the worst." "But my lord, what about my child?" Lyanna asked. "That is a more difficult question." Snow paused. "The child is alive, but during the last few weeks you have eaten and drank very little. I suspect that your body has given what it can, but that is not enough for a growing babe." Tears fell down Lyanna's eyes. "Rajan, surely something can be done to save my sister's child," Owen said. "What can I do, my lord?" Lyanna asked, wiping her face dry. "The best thing would be to eat and drink more, so your body replenishes what was lost and gives sustenance to the child." Snow called out to a little bird. A short, dark-haired girl ladled out hot soup from a large cauldron and carried the humble bowl filled with onion broth, with bits of goats, carrots, and pork. The girl handed Lyanna a plain wooden spoon and a hunk of warm brown bread drizzled with melted butter. "Have what you can, but do not rush." "Goat stew?" A rather old and small goat at that. "Shouldn't my grandson's wife have better food than that?" Olenna said. "We have no roast squans or peacock pies. Besides, plain food is healthy. Lyanna needs more liquid. The onions and carrots are filling. The goat and pork have been simmered with ale until the meat becomes tender. It might taste better with spices, pepper, cloves, and cinnamon, but we have none and the child will not care." Snow turned to the lady. "You should eat fruits, nuts, and vegetables. As much as you can. The Wintertown boys have picked apples, blackberries, pears, and plums. Francis can boil eggs, too, for a salad of greens and nuts." "But will it be too late?" Lyanna asked, worried. "I will not lie to you, my lady. We cannot be sure. But the more you eat, the better your chances. Do not give up hope, and do not bother with fancy food. Simple is better." Snow said. Lord Snow, Nymeria Sand, supported by the sand snakes, made her way across the hall. Her face was pale, and her long, unbound hair fell freely on a silk cloak of yellow and orange. She walked slowly but with determination. "My sisters say that I owe you a great deal." Jon raised his eyebrows. "Why are you up, my lady?" "I told her that she should rest." Rosieras complained. "I wanted to thank you for my life. I did not expect to survive. What reward can I give you? Gold, jewels, silks. I might even pledge my spear." "How about not dying?" "Your body is still weak and must recover. The best thing is rest, water, and food. Soups, stews, fruits, vegetables. You will also need more doses of the elixir." "If Nymeria is cured, why does she need more medicine?" Obara said. "The plague animalcules are dying. The swellings have shrunk considerably, but dying is not dead. We need to make sure they do not return. I plan to give injections over the next few days to kill the bacterium completely. That is the true problem. We don't have much elixir." "Do we have enough for my wife?" Gawain asked. "Right now, no. The yield of the mold juice is quite low. I used up all of it for the two ladies." "Why don't you simply spread the mold on 100 loaves of bread?" Olenna asked. "That discovery was an accident, which happened only because I was almost killed. I have no plans to rely on accidents in the future. Come with me." Snow stood up and led them deeper into the tower. He pushed aside homespun wool curtains, revealing a room well lit by torches. Children watched over an odd mix of containers, from small glass bottles to large wooden tubs. The vessels were in all sizes and shapes, including basins, bedpans, milk churns, metal sheets, pitchers, and buckets. A musty, earthy smell pervaded the room, like dirt and rotting leaves. "Is that mold?" Garland asked. "Yes. We are farming the mold here in different containers with different materials. Pears, plums, apples, berries, grapes, wheat, barley, and rye. So far it has been frustrating. A gallon of mold yields only a fingerful of broth. That broth needs to be cleaned and filtered to provide a few drops of elixir. Mold on bread does not produce the medicine in sufficient quantities. It is a curiosity, not a solution. A disappointment, really. A disappointment? Jon, you cured the plague, Owen cried. I cured 2 patients. 3, including myself. That is not enough. My ambitions are greater than that. I mean to end the plague. I need elixir in vast quantities. Not thimbles, but barrels. How will you do that with a few children in a small room? Olenna said. Not a few. A winter town boy walked over, leading a troop of 6 village girls. They were older than children, but not quite women, too shy to meet the eyes of the highborn. The boy had no such problem, and spoke boldly. "Me lord, this is the first batch. Becca the baker, Jez, a serving wench, Kayla of Shermer's Grove, Rosie the maid, Mora the miller's wife, and Paula, a fisher girl. Do they know their duties? Yes, me lord. Tend the crates and barrels and measure the amount of mold at morning, noon, and night. Extract the juice and put it into bottles so that the broth can be filtered and cleaned. Above all, pass along any information about the differences of each container. They are ready." "Excellent," Snow said. "Your contributions will be important. Shet, pay them now for their first 5 days. Think of the coins as a thank you for your efforts." The villagers smiled broadly as the boy took out fistfuls of silver from a fat pouch. "Half a dozen small folk girls who cannot read or write will not make much of a difference." "Why not use maesters?" Olenna asked. "Why should I? I don't need maesters. I prefer people who will follow orders. The young can learn how to read and write. Maesters are often set in their ways. I would rather train someone in new ways of thinking than waste time arguing against preconceived notions. Besides, they will be loyal to me, not the Citadel or some lord." Olenna harumphed. "They are loyal because you are paying them. 10 silver stags a day, in less than a moon, that will be 1 golden dragon, more money than their families have ever seen. I intend to hire as many bright village girls as I can find. You are generous with your gold." "I am generous with your gold, Lady Olenna. The coins come from the ransom the Reach paid. If I need to spend 20,000 dragons to make the elixir, I will. It is less than an ACL prize at a tourney in King's Landing." The worst part of prison was not the terrible food, the lice-infested pile of straw that served as a bed, or the bucket in the corner that held shit and pee. It was boredom, except for Ser Barristan. Jaime had not spoken more than a few words, and that was to yell at the guards to take away the tray before rats devoured the remains. At River Run, he kept company with other captives from the Westerlands, cousins, squires, and knights that he had known for years. He also enjoyed mocking the Tully guards and their fat captain. Jaime forgot the man's name, preferring to call the old knight Ser Big Belly. "Jaime Lannister," a tinge of disgust crossed the well-lined face at the cell door. But any knight would flinch from the stench. At least Ser Barristan refrained from calling him the Kingslayer. He stood up, the chains on his wrists and ankles rattling against the stone floor. More guards were lined up in the corridor, garbed in the green and gold of Highgarden. "You are wanted outside," Barristan said. The jailer opened the door and unlocked the chains. Under heavy guard, Jaime was taken from Castle Mooton to Florian's Tower. The hall bustled with activity. The sick had been moved to the sides of the great room, and masters and guards watched as winter town boys and other children went back and forth. The Red Viper gave a mocking bow as Jaime passed the Dornish contingent. He was taken up the stairs by the Hound and Brienne with Barristan in tow. The room was less of a solar than an unfinished space, drafty but with ample sun. The Queen of Thorns sat in one corner, her veined, wrinkled hands clutching a green and gold shawl. At the window, a young, dark-skinned man in a loose-fitted duskin tunic fed corn to ravens. Garland Tyrell stood next to a few other nobles, and Arya Stark rested with a sword across her knees, the naked steel exposed to the air. But the clear and dominant force in the room sat behind a crude desk, bracketed by 2 dire wolves. The right shoulder was bandaged, and the face pale. But Jon Snow showed no other sign of injury or weakness. "You are a hard man to kill," Jampiak ate. No one laughed. "Sit," Snow pushed forth a wooden bowl. "Eat." His stomach growled, but Jaime hesitated to take up the wooden spoon. "Onion soup?" We ran out of goat and pork, so the broth is mostly onions and carrots. "Eat, Sir Jaime. If I wanted to poison you, you would already be dead." Jaime lifted the bowl and drank his full. The soup was warm and nourishing, the browned onions surprisingly rich and sweet. He put the empty dish down and wiped the traces from his mouth. I had nothing to do with the attack. I have no desire for your death, Snow. The second statement may be true, but the assassin was waiting outside the tower and knew your presence might lure me out. How would he know that? Yagan stayed quiet in the prison. The Tyrells could do little to compel him to speak. After all, they were marrying their rose to Joffrey. If anything happened to Jaibai, his father, brother, and sister would lay waste to Highgarden. I knew nothing about a shooter. I believe you, Sarah, you were duped into playing your role. But even so, you were involved in the attempt. The gray eyes turned hard and cold. I know why you came to Maidenpool. Sir Jaime, and unless you want everyone in this room to know, you will give me the name. Who? Jamesy forced himself not to groan. All his life he had treated Tyrion well, except with Tysha. His brother had been blissfully happy in his cottage by the sunset sea, but it could never last. If the story became public, Tyrion would be humiliated. Baelish, he found me in Maidenpool. He told me where. Snow raised a hand and Jane stopped speaking. Peter Baelish is in Maidenpool. Why? Olenna asked, surprised. He must be trying to kill Jon on Joffrey's orders. Arya exclaimed. Where did you see him? Jon asked. Outside Jonquil's pool, Baelish informed the king and the small council that Garland marched to Maidenpool, but I had no idea that Baelish would come here. Where is he now? Arya asked. A strange question to ask someone who was in prison for the last 4 days. Jaime snorted. We found no trace of the shooter. Baelish may have left Maidenpool and be on the road to King's Landing. He could be hiding in the Riverlands or gone to the Vale, Garland said. Men like Littlefinger hire assassins to do their killing. The shooter might be in the town waiting for another chance, but they may have also left with Baelish. Barristan said, Wonderful. Baelish may be in Maidenpool. He might not be. His hirelings may be here. They might be elsewhere. Littlefinger may be in the Vale, or Cracklaw Point, or rowing in the Bay of Crabs. How does this help us? Olenna snarked. We have searched Maidenpool and Castle Mooton extensively, Garland said. But outside the walls, there are many farms and fields where a man could hide. That doesn't include the forests and hills to the west and south, or the coastal bogs. I do not believe Baelish is within the gates, but he could be outside the town proper. Sir Garland, do all your men know that Lady Lynette is cured? Snow asked. Some do, the Fossaways, and the chief knights, in my service. But Lynette is still in Florian's tower. Word of her recovery is no doubt spreading. Garland replied, I want the Reachmen to know. Tell them that I have the cure for the plague. Alaris makes sure all the Martell guards are aware that Nymeria sand is better. Spread the news far and wide. The sick will flood into Maidenpool, Jon. Have you enough elixir? Alaris asked. Not yet, but the cycle of production is 4 to 5 days. That will give us some time. I will double the guards on the town walls. We will monitor anyone going through the gates and record their names, Garland said. Littlefinger will not give his name. He is clever enough to slip past the walls. If he does, he may make another attempt on your life, Snow. Olenna warned. So be it. The stranger comes for all of us in the end. Baelish has caused enough trouble. Rats cannot be allowed to hide in the shadows, Snow said. The Queen of Thorns departed the room, taking her sweet time. Jaime was certain the old harridan could walk more quickly, but the lady dawdled until Barristan offered a gallant elbow. Better him than me, Jaime thought. Garland hurried away with the other Reachmen, and the Wintertown boys left after receiving orders. Snow motioned with a hand, and the Hound and Brienne backed out of the door. Araka, I need to speak with Jaime Lannister alone. The girl with the naked blade stood up and snarled. Kingslayer, you had better not cause any trouble. The Grey Wolf glared at him with obvious disdain, before following her mistress out. Jaime refrained from any clever repartee. His hands were unchained, but he had no weapon, armor, or shield. Rodya Stark might only be 1 and 5, but the dire wolves were fully grown. Besides, he would look ridiculous brawling with a girl half his size. They waited in silence until the others had retreated a fair distance. The ravens cackled, and a sleek black cat hissed at the caged birds. The white wolf was quiet as a grave. Jaime wondered if the red eyes were passing judgment. Why did you try to abduct Jurolon? I didn't. I only wanted to speak to him in private. I wanted to bring him to the east gate, but the boy ran as soon as he saw me, Jaime insisted. You are a Lannister? The Lannister army burned and pillaged the Riverlands. Jerry has a good head on his shoulders. A boy should run from armed strangers. I mean him no harm. I swear that on my honor as a knight, I only wish to speak with him. Very well. Snow rang a bell on the desk, summoning a dark-haired Wintertown boy and Tyrion's son. You wanted to talk, Sir Jaime. So talk. Geryon had lost any fear from their past encounter. The boy stared at him intensely, with curious skepticism. Geryon had seen that look on Tyrion many times. My name is Jaime Lannister. I am not an idiot, Sarah. I know who you are. You were a prisoner at Riverrun, and Lord Snow informed me that you would want to speak. Even if he had not, Chat knows your name. Jerry, we share blood. You were born a Lannister. My brother Tyrion is your father. That can't be. Mother told me that the lions took my father away. She was forced to leave Lannisport. Why did my father abandon us? Yamma squirmed. Tyrion never knew about you. How? He was wed to my mother. She fled for her life from the lions. Did your brother drive her away? No, not exactly. Either you were lying or you were hiding something. What did the Lannisters do? What did your brother do? Why did he never look for us? Jerry asked. Sir Aemay is not lying, and neither is your mother. Tyrion is your father, and it was his father, Lord Tywin, that broke the marriage and drove your mother away, Snow said. Did you know, my lord? Jerry said. Jon nodded. I did, but your mother swore me to secrecy. It is her story to tell, not mine. Had Sir Jaime not confessed the truth, I would not say anything. The boy's eyes hardened in anger. To this day, my mother is afraid of highborns. She refuses to enter a castle. What did they do to her? Jon broke the silence. Something terrible. But the shame belongs to those who committed these acts. Your mother bears no fault. As for your father, that is a harder question. Tyrion would make amends. I hope to take you back to the Crown Lands, not to King's Landing, but I could bring you outside the city where you could meet my brother. Make amends? He abandoned us. He can come to Maidenpool. I will not go to him. The angry boy turned to Snow. My lord, what will happen to me? Am I to be traded to the Lannisters like a sack of wheat? Of course not. You are a Wintertown boy. You earn the position through hard work and cleverness, not your name or birth. It will be your choice to reconcile with Tyrion or not. Whatever may happen, you have a place up north. That will not change. Jon said, You are one of us, Jerry. You will always be welcome, Chet said. The boy took a deep breath. Thank you, Lord Snow. What do you think I should do? Nothing for now. Do not make a decision out of haste. Tyrion and Sir Jaime may mean well. The other Lannisters will not feel the same. Lord Tywin will see you as a stain on his honor. So will the Queen and Joffrey. The Lannisters have murdered people for much less. It is not safe for you to go south, Jon said. The king is my cousin. I wish I had never learned that. Milord, please excuse me. I need some time and air. The dazed boy ran away. I will go and make sure Jerry doesn't do anything foolish. Chet left a moment later. That went poorly, Jaime said. What did you expect, sir? Did you think the boy would embrace you with open arms? This confession was always going to be difficult, and Jerry does not even know what your father did. The real truth would make it much, much worse, Snow snapped. Yazani rose to leave. Thank you for not telling the others about Geryon, and for not revealing what Lord Tywin did. I didn't do that for you. You are free to go. It is Jerry's choice whether he wishes to speak to Tyrion or not. You will respect his decision, Snow said. The harbor at Maidenpool was full. From a porthole of the Merling King, Pater Baelish looked out at the two-headed flat-bottomed ferry that docked that morning. Longshoremen unloaded barrels from old King Aindahar's waterhorse, and soldiers brought the cargo into town. The Merling King was a Braavosi trading galley. Like all such vessels, it had two surprising qualities. Despite the ample cargo space, the galley was fast and easy to maneuver, performing well under both sail and oars. And just as important, the Merling King was a smuggler's ship, with concealed compartments to evade customs, sergeants, and harbor masters. Baelish had spent the last few days here, hiding in plain sight. The The gates of Maidenpool were under heavy guard, but the stone wall that separated the harbor and the town was sparsely manned. After the Tyrells had ordered the crew to depart and the ships to anchor, the harbor was rarely used, and fishermen passed without scrutiny. He heard the code rapped out. 2 beats. A pause, and then 2 more. Baelish opened the secret door and saw a stocky man in drab brown garb. "Ah, Sir Lothar, what news?" "Jon Snow has cured the plague, my lord," the sellsword blurted out. "What does it take to kill this man? He should be dead from the poison or the plague. He rose from his bed 2 days ago. Since then, he has cured Lyanna Tyrell and Nymeria Sand. The Septons claim that Snow must be blessed by the gods." "I need Snow to be blessed by the stranger," Baelish quipped. "Wait, you said Garland's wife is cured. Are you certain? This is not some trick or a sleight of hand." "No, my lord. Lyanna Tyrell went on a walk near Jonquil's pool. Nymeria Sand was seen with her sisters. Snow really did cure the plague. He makes more medicine every day." Baelish stroked his small, pointed beard. "Astounding. Do you know what this means? Joffrey will be furious. If Snow survives and becomes famous for defeating the plague..." Baelish waved a hand dismissively. "Who cares about Joffrey? Think about it. Quack nostrums and false remedies were worth thousands of golden dragons. How much would people pay for an actual cure? Millions. Imagine what archons and princes will pay to save their children." "But, my lord, Snow will not give you the cure," Lothar said, his mouth open with shock. "Then we will take it. Where did you store the wildfire?" "In a cellar near the Stinking Goose." "Why?" "Snow is not the only one who understands diversion." Baelish smiled. The numbers did not add up. Jon examined the rows and rows of raw figures on the sheets of parchment. He did not fault the Wintertown boys or the dozens of new hirelings, eager to work hard and try their utmost. Their effort was not the problem. From pots, pans, and tubs, the village girls collected mold juice at a trickle, only filling up an inch of one small beaker. The production was not enough. More plague patients arrived at Maidenpool every day. The elixir needed to multiply to grow in leaps and bounds. Jon took a walk to clear his head. He passed by Lady Tyrell at the head of a table, urging Leonette and the Moodin girl to sup on lemon cakes, apple crisps, and honey biscuits, baked with blackberries and nuts. The Queen of Thorns sliced a thick slab of pungent cheese, the blue veins stretching across the crumbly and moist body. Jon wondered if he would ever enjoy any food as much as Olenna liked her cheese. Near the fires, townsmen cured barrels of white oak with warm but not scalding water. The purpose was to wash out any traces of sour beer and spoiled wine, and to seal any leaks. Further away, the tubs of blue-green mold gave off a musty aroma, although some of the smell came from a clay jar of pickled pig's feet in Clegane's hands. The Wintertown boys ate warm bread and melted cheese with broth, and Chet poured a jigger of amber liquid into the bubbling cauldron. "What are you doing?" Thorsov Mare shouted. Chet turned around, the half-full bottle in his hand. "It adds flavor to the onions." "You are using whiskey in the soup," the Red Priest cried in horror. "Whiskey? What is that?" Owen raised his head up from his food. "A gift from the gods. Whiskey is meant to be savored like a beautiful woman, not thrown away like piss in a pot." Something tickled in the back of Jon's mind. The stinky blue cheese, the soured beer, the musty mold, the pickled trotters, the spoiled hindquarters of the hog, and the whiskey. They were all connected. A pungent smell. "I'm an idiot," Jon announced loudly, clapping himself on the forehead. "I doubt that," Arya snorted. "Gather everyone around. Chet, bring the bottle." A large crowd surrounded the work table. The guards had dragged over a few chairs for Lady Olenna and a few of the highborn, but most sat down on the floor. Jon held up the glass bottle. "The Northmen know that this is whiskey, more potent than strong wine and better tasting than the spiced liquors of Essos or the black tar rum of the sailors. But how is it made?" "Me, lord. We distilled it in a tall copper still," a boy said. "That is the middle step. There are 3. Start at the beginning. We mix and ferment the mash in vats. Then we heat and distill the liquid in a sill. Lastly, we age the whiskey in barrels. Chets. The first step is the key. The mash turns barley and corn into liquor. Fermentation makes cheese, beer, pickles, wine, whiskey, and the elixir that cures the plague. The cure for the plague is made the same way as cheese?" Olenna asked. The same technique nomads fermented the milk of goats, sheep, and cows thousands of years ago on the plains of Essos. They preserved fruits and grain, baked bread, made beer and wine. We use the process for whiskey in the north, and now we can produce medicine. That is wonderful, my lord, Chet said, echoing the other eager Wintertown boys. Why? Why are you so excited? Garland asked. Because we know fermentation. When the war ended, the Maester built golden fields at the fork of the White Knife. We have been busy turning the bounty of the land into whiskey, bourbon, rye, and other liquors. We know the ways of preparing the best malt, Chet replied. Tell me, then, what are the most important factors for fermentation? Jon said. Air, a young girl volunteered. Some fermentation doesn't, but this elixir grew on bread exposed to air. Heat, another boy added. It needs to be warm to break down the mash, but not too hot, else the mixture spoils. Moisture. The rooms with the mash vats are damp. Mixing, Chet said. We mill the grains and mash them up so that our yield is higher. By breaking down the mash, it yields more alcohol. The material, Jerry added. We used many different grains, but the best was corn. We should use corn, my lord, and not other grains or fruits. Well done, Jon said warmly. The mold juice grew too slowly, and only on the surface of trays and tubs. That is why it failed. The better way would be large barrels with the right warmth and moisture. A deep tank for the corn mash to ferment. But, my lord, if we use a sealed barrel, how does the mold get air? The first girl asked. Simple. Jon picked up a copper alembic, his fingers on the metal tube connecting the large and small flasks. I understand, my lord, Chet cried out. We hammer tubes into the casks and blow air through, or use the metal and glass to stir. That way we can mix or give air to the mash. How do you know this will work, Snow? Lyanna asked. I don't. We will test these ideas out. We have dozens of barrels, and enough workers to measure and record the results. Once we have proven the methods, there is no limit to what can be done or how much elixir can be produced, Jon said. Her brother Jon was right. The only thing that surprised Arya was that others were surprised. 4 days passed, and the first new batches had been extracted from barrels, yielding much greater amounts. The operation had been divided into 3 stages. First, the mold was started in shallow trays on a soup of cooked grains. After spots of blue-green appeared, it was moved to casks full of thick molasses-like corn liquid. The barrels rested on the sides with holes drilled through the top and plugged with tubes made from pig bladders. The last part was the trickiest. Under Jon's watch, the medicine was separated out and sealed in freshly washed bottles. They discovered 3 things. First, the mixture in the barrels needed regular attention. Billows pumped air through, constantly agitating the goop. Second, the corn liquid was immensely productive, improving yields tenfold. Third, a servant from the Reach found a green golden mold on a sweet melon. Jon mixed this new mold with the original spores. Lady Olenna quipped that the elixir would be the colors of High Garden. With success came the ability to treat more patients. Word of the cure had spread, bringing ships and caravans to Maidenpool. The gates were crowded with horses and wagons, and Arya wondered if they came out of curiosity rather than being sick with the plague. Certainly, that was why Jack and Thor was here. Remarkable. Quite remarkable, the Lorathi said. How much elixir has your brother produced? Arya didn't know. You wanted to speak to Jon, not count barrels. The man with half-red and half-white hair chuckled. A man is curious like all the others. Arya scowled and bit her lip. Too many maesters and septons hovered about the hall, trying to learn all they could. They were like rats in a granary. She wondered who they spied at, if it was the Reachdorn, the Citadel, or some other group. Come along, he is waiting. As they entered the solar from the staircase, a grim Barstein solemnly left. The room was brightly lit, and her brother was alone, except for the White Wolf, the Black Cat, and the Ravens. He motioned for them to sit down, as Ghost padded over to the closed door. You are a faceless man, Jon said. We prefer to be known as servants of the God of Many Faces, Jaqen answered. I would thank you for helping Arya escape Harrenhal, but you are not here for that. A man owed a girl for 3 deaths stolen from him of Many Faces. Those lives have been repaid. No thanks are needed. A man hears that you have created a wondrous cure, unknown in any houses of tolling. He wishes to know the price, Jaqen said. You are not a loyalty. You can speak in the argot of bravos, Jon said. Which one? The chatter of boasting bravos, the refined speech of the bankers, the cant of merchants and thieves, or the cryptic words of priests, the slang of the wharves, the workers at Checkuport, the captains of the purple piers, or the foreign sailors at Ragman's harbor. Bravos contains many people, but for all of them I ask the same question. How much? How much do you need? Jon shot back. Enough to cure Bravos of the plague. And how much is that? Bravos has tens of thousands in the inner sanctum. Many more live in the islands across the lagoon. The city also controls the lands to the harbor of Lorath, to the flatlands of Pentos and the hills west of Norvos. The Sea Lord would quarantine Ragman's harbor. If the plague has spread, the Brovisi would need quite a lot. Jaqen admitted, you are not the only one who wants elixir. Sarcumbaristan has asked. Sarcumbar says there are many ill in Old Town. Alaris tells me the plague is in Planky Town and may spread to Sunspear. But I can kill your enemies, can they? Jaqen said, I take it that you know who tried to kill me. Bortir, Baelish, speak the name and a man will do the rest, Yaxen said. Where is he? Arya blurted out. The assassin shook his head. You are not paying for that. If you knew his location, you might kill him yourself. Then who would pay a price to the many-faced god? Baelish hasn't been spotted at the gates, but he must be close, if you are sure he can be killed. For any reason, how quickly can Baelish be killed? Jon asked. Death is certain, the time is not, Jaqen said. That is hardly reassuring, Jon said. We are making more elixir, but I can't promise enough to treat an entire city. Why do you want the cure anyway? You are an assassin, not a healer. Who would not want a cure to the plague? Bravos is not the only free city that has suffered from the epidemic. We are merely the first to ask. We will not be the last, and the next requests may not be so polite. Is that a threat? Jon replied. Merely a warning, men are willing to pay gold for life or death. Your elixir holds that power over the free cities. What people cannot buy, they steal or take. I will give you the same answer as I did Sir Bastan. The elixir is for the sick. I am thankful to you, but I cannot promise medicine, only to bravos. I did not grant Barrisan's request, even though he saved my life. I will not pay that price for Barris's head, but I will help those who suffer from the plague, Jon said. Words are wind. A man puts more trust in deeds. Agreed. Deeds will prove my words to be true. Jon dismissed the assassin. Jaqen rose and gave a short, quick bow before departing the Solar. Unlike Barristan, the Bravosi betrayed no anger or frustration. Arya wondered what the Lorathi thought behind that polite smile. Jon, maybe we should promise him some elixir. Her brother shrugged. No one gets everything they want. He is hiding something. But I suppose secrets come easily to a society of assassins. What do you mean? She asked. Why did Yak come to Maidenpool? You saw him only a day after I was shot. He claims that he had nothing to do with Baelish's attempt. Arya said, I believe that, but he came to town before I cured the plague. Faceless men do not visit places for no reason. Rhaegar is a killer, so who is he here to kill? Someone important. A name to offer the Red God. It could be a Tyrell or a Martell, or Petter Baelish. Arya exclaimed, possible, perhaps even probable. The Faceless men charge a high price, but Baelish is the sort to make enemies, powerful ones. This is only a guess. But if he is here to kill Baelish, then I have no desire to pay twice for the same deed. Jaqen has been here for over a week. Why isn't Littlefinger dead? Arya asked. He may already be dead, but I doubt we are that lucky. Jackson might be waiting for Backsleech to emerge from hiding, or he might know where Backsleech is and still be biding his time. That would be more troubling. Do you think he means to betray us? I do not know. Iradia, the Faceless Men are a cult of assassins who worship the god of death. They have their own goals, and despite the talk of saving Bravos, I doubt they match ours. But Hagrid is not Baelish or Tywin. He is a cold-blooded killer, but not our enemy, and it would be better not to make him one. Jon mused. Milord, a little bird burst through the door. What is the matter, Francis? It is the lady. The babe is coming. The young girl blurted out. The crowd parted before him as Jon made his way through guards and knights to a curtained square area. The makeshift room was even more thronged, but Owen led him to the bed. Lady Lyanna had regained her rosy cheeks and bright eyes from days of good food and drink, but she looked frightened and tired, her forehead dripping sweat and her mouth pursed with worry. Snow, thank you for coming. Garland stood with his grandmother and wife's father. Why are so many people here? Jon frowned at the large crowd. The maesters from the Reach all wish to attend, but there are also many local healers, septas, and midwives. Prince Oberyn and his paramour Ellaria have offered their help, Owen said. Who is in charge? We're not certain. My grandmother is trying to determine that, Garland said. Jon rolled his eyes and pushed forward, getting the attention of the healers. Who among you has delivered the most babies? A round pink-faced man puffed up. I have delivered 22. Balabar was Lord Ridwine's maester, and borrowed by the Tyrells from King's Landing. And I have seen hundreds give birth, and that is only the ones I remember. A shriveled woman with a sharp nose and steel-gray hair tied up in a bun claimed she looked older than the Queen of Thorns, and just as tough. Your name? Jon asked. Cruda. I have lived on the Bay of Crabs all my life and delivered babies from Claw Isle to the salt pans. Been a midwife longer than these beardless fools have been alive. She has, me lord. I have tramped these roads for 30 years. Cruda was old before I got here. A shabby septon with thick gray hair said, Very well, Cruda, you will deliver the child. Maester Balabar, pick the most experienced healers among the Reachmen to assist the good wife. Chet and Jurian, make certain that there is hot water and clean towels for the lady. Prepare a batch of elixir. Are you certain of this? Balabar has a good reputation as a healer, Garland said. Who do you trust in a duel? The man who has swung the sword 10,000 times, or the one who has read about fighting in books? Cruda may not have studied at the Citadel, but she knows childbirth. Experience matters here, and cleanliness. Jon wrinkled his nose. Should I leave the room? Garland asked. No, but order everyone else to go. Stay with your lady wife. Give her food and water. Walk with her if she wishes. The labor can take many hours. You must do everything possible to make Lyanna comfortable. Fat chance of that. The birthing bed is a miserable place, Olenna said. I have no doubt that is true. Perhaps one day things will be better. Jon departed the room. Arya tried her best to ignore the shrieks and grunts coming from behind the curtains. Garland's knights, brave men eager to fight at tourneys and battles, shuddered and paled at the noises. Sarah Barristan winced, as did many of the highborn and masters lingering outside. I am never having a baby, Arya declared with disgust. That will make Robb happy, Jon quipped. You may change your mind one day, sweetling. Lariosan said. No, that's not me, Arya said. Milord, milord. Come quick. Chet's voice cried out. The babe! Jon sprang to his feet and ripped the curtain aside, with his sister following closely behind. There was no wailing or crying, but looks of grief and confusion on the healers and priests. The newborn child was laying silently on a blanket of gold and green. When Rickon, the youngest Stark, had been born, he had screamed so loudly that all of Winterfell heard his cries. Cruda, what happened? Jon asked. The babe is not breathing, the midwife replied. A fat man raised hands with the septas. Let us pray that the father will receive your child into his blessed hall, and the mother above will greet the boy with mercy. Screw that. The father and mother can wait their turn. Jon brushed the child's forehead and inspected the nose and mouth carefully. The skin is cold. Get some warm compresses. Chet, find me tubes. He took a moist towel and began to wipe the mouth and nose, clearing any snot and blood. The children rushed to action. A Wintertown boy scrambled to bring pipes of different shapes and materials. A young girl brought a heated basin full of warm water. Jon gently rubbed the baby's chest before pushing his fingers into the belly. He grabbed a tube made from a pig's bladder and then blew up the child's nostrils, first the left and then the right. He opened the baby's mouth, kneading the throat and jaw with care. What are you doing? Garland asked. The child needs air. His lungs must learn to breathe. We must provide that air, if he cannot. The seven-pointed star teaches that a newborn is easily snuffed out, like a candle in the wind by the gods. The stranger cannot be denied. The septon cried, the stranger can go fuck himself. Jon replied, splashing water on the child's legs and arms. Chet, I need fresh linens. I need warmth. Put the embers of the fire into a pan. And I need air. More air. He continued blowing through the bladder, sending air vigorously into the child's nose. He thumped the chest gently, trying to start the baby's breath. "There's more air outside the tower," Jerry said, handing over wash blankets. Jon lined the basin with a blanket, the water soaking the wool. He gently placed the infant into the tub, the head resting well above the water. No, a baby must be warm and comfortable. Jon repeated the cycle, the rubbing, the breath, and palpitations. No one prays for breath, but nothing lives without air. "Snow," Thoros spoke hesitantly. "There's a secret known to the priests of the Lord of Light. Speak up, sir. The child has a little time," Jon said impatiently. At the Red Temple in Volantis, the high priest taught how to use smokes and powders. There is one that caused flames to burn more brightly, so that yellow ripened to gold and reds turned deep crimson. The air would become clean, the light would be brighter, and the shadows darker. "Yes, until the powder burned away, Thoros. That secret came from ancient Valyria. The powder is an ingredient in the glass candles of the Dragon Lords. The Citadel claims the 3 black candles in the vault cannot be lit, but they are wrong." Jon extended out his hand. "Give me the powder." Thoros removed a small bag from the pouch hanging on his belt. "I don't have much." Jon opened the drawstrings to reveal a fine dust, as white as ghost's fur. "I know this. This is saltpeter. We used it in Golden Fields for wheat and corn, and it also makes stronger glass. I have never burned it directly, though. Bring me a flame." Rosier raked through the fire with a poker, pushing the cinders into a short bucket, the embers glowing against the iron bands. Guards carried the wooden bucket over. Jon placed the white powder into a glass beaker and stretched the tube over the top. He held it over the heat, the powder turning darker as it began to burn. Jon sniffed the air coming from the bladder, a smile lighting up his face. Jon waited until the bottom of the flask darkened from the fire. Then he placed the end of the tube near the baby's face. In the silent room, as the Tyrells and healers looked upon, the small head turned, groping for the rush of air. The infant coughed and then inhaled. A short gasp at first, but then more steady and slow, the chest rising and falling. The child gave a soft cry. "He is breathing," Owen cried in wonder. "He needs more." "Chet, find the saltpeter we brought from the north. We have many flasks in the boxes." "The other salts might work too," Jon said to the Wintertown boys who rushed off. "It may still not be enough," Balabar pointed at the newborn's face. The skin and the eyes were an ugly yellow, the color that is a sign of illness. Rosier lectured about this. "The child has jaundice. If the skin stays yellow, he may not survive. It will be hard to drink and sleep. Somehow, the yellow weakens a child." Alarazed, "The stranger comes all too often at the birth of a babe." The Septon bowed his head. "The stranger will not have this one." Jon washed the boy's mouth and nose with a damp cloth. The child accepted the touch. He thought of his true-born siblings, Rhaenys stabbed to death and Aegon torn from his mother's breast. This child was much younger, but did not deserve to die. Jon thought of his parents, Rhaegon and Lyanna. They did not deserve to die either. Only Aegaeris deserved the kiss of the stranger. Sinners should pay for their crimes, not the innocent. What had Rhaenys told him in the Sept before she said goodbye? After darkness, after the rains and storms, the sun heals. The sun heals. This is how to save him. Place the child in the light of the sun. Jon said firmly. "How do you know?" Balabar asked. "I can't say how I know, but I know it is the truth. The sun will save the child." And it did, the golden rays bathing the newborn child in the solar. The boy gazed sleepily at her, the head resting after a long feeding. The swaddled child curled up against Leonette's bosom, nestled between his parents. Olenna had rarely seen anyone as happy as her grandson, and why not? 2 days ago, Garland's newborn could not even breathe. Now the baby suckled down his mother's milk, burped, and yawned, his belly full. The child needs to rest. The dark-skinned girl, dressed as a boy, said. Allairs was no man. No doubt she was one of the Red Viper's byblows, hiding her sex to study at the Citadel. The maesters must be blind. Olenna snorted. Garland nuzzled his son, and then handed the boy over to be taken up the stairs to the solar. There the boy would sleep in a large wicker basket, padded with warmed linens, his now pale skin warmed by the sun. "Well, how is my great-grandson?" "Completely healthy," Garland said, with wonder. He eats, he drinks. He even smiled at us. He's growing well. Even after a few hours, he feels heavier. He pees, poops, and still grows. Lyanna added happily, "But how has the boy recovered so quickly? Is it the fire air conjured from rocks and powders? Or the sun? Or mother's milk? Do the Northmen have other secrets?" Lyanna said, "No one really knows." Owen Fossaway said, "Snow tried many things. What worked and what didn't is unclear, even to the maesters. The baby thrives, and we must give thanks for that." "Why have you not named the boy?" Olenna asked. "We were worried that he would not live," Garland admitted. "Now that he is healthy, we want to celebrate the birth with a feast. We plan to give him a name there." "Well, as long as it is not mace, one oaf in the family is more than enough. I always wondered if Luther was hit with a mace that morning to want that name for his son." So she said acidly, "Lady Olenna." An old maester walked over with a few other reachmen. "Yes, Lawmies, what have you found out?" "Not much, my lady. The Wintertown crew keeps Snow's secrets well. Even a bag of golden dragons would not tempt them to speak." "Grandmother, are you spying on Snow?" a shocked Garland asked. "Of course I am. Unfortunately, these children are an unhelpful bunch and rather loyal." "Lomies, can we make the elixir?" Olenna asked. "Little enough to treat a few people, but nothing compared to the vast quantities that Snow can produce. Their yield increases every day," Losian said. "We need that elixir. What if the plague worsens, or spreads up the Mander?" Olenna said. "The elixir may be even more important than we thought," the rosy-cheeked Balabar said. "More important than the plague?" Olenna replied. "The plague spreads through animalcules in the blood, but other diseases, the pox, the sweating sickness, the bloody flux, may also be caused by these animalcules. Snow gave Lady Lyanna a shot of elixir after the birth. As a precaution, he said that was to make sure I did not fall ill. He thought my milk would be better for the child than a wet nurse," Lyanna added. "So this elixir may cure other sicknesses as well." Olenna said, "We cannot be sure. It certainly may work, but some diseases may be unaffected by elixir. Jon has yet to test the medicine on other ailments," Owen said. "Not yet. But he will. Snow has a curious mind and more than enough helpers to run tests. With time, he will uncover all the secrets of the elixir. He could stop deaths from childbirth. He could cure sicknesses that kill the young," Lomi said. "Snow could do more than that," Garland realized. "Half the deaths in war are from disease. An army that can heal their wounded and fears no plague would be hard to face." "The North has already won once against the Reach," Olenna said. "The next war will be worse. With the elixir, Snow will crush us," Garland said. Her sister had recovered with alacrity. As Tywin and Alleras watched, Nyme sparred with Obara. The oldest sand snake was taller and stronger and used a shield and Dornish spear. Nymeria preferred exotic weapons, hidden daggers, a powerful recurve bow with horn on the belly, and the scimitar, halfway between the Arak and sword. She relied on speed and quickness for the curved blade to offset Obara's reach. The fight was a draw. Nyme was on the offense, but the scimitar could not penetrate the heavy wood shield, double layered with bronze and iron. A good match, but not a true representation of battle. The scimitar is better used on horseback. Obara would be more likely to fight in a phalanx with other spearmen. Oberyn said, "Is there news, father?" Alos knew that a raven had come that morning. "The plague has shut down King's Landing. The streets are empty and the court is closed. No one has seen any trace of the Boy King or Tywin Lannister for many days." "Do you think the plague killed House Lannister?" Obara asked eagerly. "I hope not. I want to kill Tywin with my own hands." The Oberyn replied, "If there were royal deaths, they would ring the bells of the Great Sept. Although that may also be closed. The plague rages in King's Landing, just like it does in Duskendale and all of the Crown Lands. The Lannisters are hiding behind the castle walls, like the rest of Westeros." "What about Doran, father? What of our cousins and sisters?" Nymeria said, "My brother has returned to Sunspear from the Water Gardens. That does not bode well. I sent a raven that you were cured, but it would take days to reach Doran, and longer for him to respond," Oberyn said. "How will we repay Snow?" "How do we get elixir for Dornan?" Nymeria asked. "He has not asked for anything. We are not the only ones who want elixir. The Queen of Thorns will be eager to secure medicine for Highgarden. She may outbid us with lands and gold. Jon did not want gold to save Nymeria. A title or castle in the Reach will not matter to him. He never cared for glory or fame at the Citadel, Alleras said. All men have desires. What lies between their legs? Gold to buy comfort and pleasure, power and dominion over others. Snow must want something besides dusty books and little brass tools for seeing invisible creatures. Dijane said, Jon is a man, and men have wants. That is true. But those wants may be very different from others. You assume his ambitions are small, gold, women, or power. But I do not think that is the case. It may not be within the power of either House, Tyrell, or Martell to grant his wishes. We have underestimated Snow. I did not think it was possible to cure the plague or save a child born without breath. The Tyrells are in his debt, and so are we. There is no easy way to repay that. We'll deal with that later. Garland and Lyanna have invited us to a feast for their child. Let us celebrate that first, Oberyn said. The ravens returned from their forage, flying so densely through the windows that the flock blocked the light of the setting sun. Jon hushed them as the birds entered the solar. He did not want the baby to wake from slumber. The ravens grumbled at the troughs of water and corn. They preferred to feast on flesh over grain, but had not found any carrion to scavenge. The birds had also not found Baelish. Jon was certain that Littlefinger would make another attempt on his life. Baelish was not the sort to give up, and Joffrey was not a king who would accept failure. The Lord Protector of the Vale could not risk Jon returning to Winterfell, and Jon wanted the confrontation to occur in Maidenpool, not the Vale or King's Landing. A growl came from outside. A gray she-wolf pushed through the door, and Arya, breathless from rushing up the stairs, ran in as well. Nymeria snarled, the dark golden eyes full of fury. Arya rubbed the gray fur around the neck. The she-wolf was taller than his sister. I don't know why Nymeria is so upset, Arya said. She has been snapping at the servants since the morning. Ghost approached and sniffed the air. The white wolf bared his teeth and sprang alert. The snout pointed toward the door. His dire wolf had no voice, but Jon could feel the restless energy. What changed this morning? They are preparing for the feast. The Tyrells have ordered barrels of ale and wine. Hunters delivered venison, rabbits, and ducks. Clegane was more excited about the chickens and pig's feet from the nearby farms. Then there are many strangers in the hall, Arya understood immediately. You think they are spies? Littlefinger's men? We should always trust Ghost and Nymeria. There's no doubt of their loyalty or sense of smell. On the night I was shot, the dire wolves might have picked up the scent of a stranger. That could be Littlefinger or his assassin. Should we alert the guards? No. If Beetsit is here, we want to catch him. If he is not, then his men might lead us to him. Alerting the guards might allow him to escape. Jon calmed Ghost and Nymeria down and motioned to the black cat. Come, Baltharion, time to hunt. The hall was full of roses, but fortunately most were adorned on green banners hanging from the walls or emblazoned on shields, cloaks, and tunics. There were other flowers besides golden roses on the trestle tables, golden dandelions, bunches of purple lilac, blue forget-me-nots, red dragon's breath, platters of luscious fruit, melons, fire plums, peaches, red and white grapes, made a mouth-watering display. Jon was amused that there were no apples, but that was not a slight of the Fossaway sigil. He could smell apples baked with cinnamon and butter into cakes and tarts, as well as great racks of meat roasting over fires. The Tyrells were generous hosts. Ravens, roosting on the window ledges, watched the steady flow of men and supplies through the doors of the great hall. Stevedores and other dockhands carried in barrels of ale, mead, and cider. Draft horses pulled wagons loaded with crates of salt pork, casks of sausages, and sacks of flour. Somewhere in this mass of servants, merchants, and farmers, Baelish and his lackeys were hiding. There were too many strong scents for Ghost or Nymeria to locate the schemer. Then Jon noticed something odd. Where are the ladies? He did not see Lyanna, Olenna, or the Sand Snakes. Oberyn and his paramour were missing as well. They went to bathe at Jonquil's pool, so they can dress fancy for the feast. Jon laughed. I take it you have no interest in gowns and kirtles? I have no gowns and only one other set of clothes, Arya said proudly. We will look plain compared to finery of the Tyrells and the Martells, like a true northerner. Their banter was interrupted by a loud cry. Fire! Fire! a voice shouted from outside the tower. "The bathhouse is on fire." Lyanna, Garland cried in panic. House Mouton built the great bathhouse centuries ago, claiming that the waters were blessed by the Mother above. In time, the faith accepted that explanation, and an order of holy sisters attended bathers in Jonquil's pool. A mass exodus followed Garland out of the tower. Knights from the Reach, maesters, Tyrell, and Dornish guards rushed out the great hall. Brienne joined them with Edric Dane, but Clegane did not. Most servants remained, as did many of the workers who were delivering goods. The first made sense. The preparations for the feast would take time, and they could not leave cauldrons and ovens unwatched, but farmers and merchants would check on their horses and wagons. "Clegane, aren't you going to help?" Barristan asked. "Run into a fire when no one is paying me? My job is to protect Snow, not to pretend I am a knight in some silly song." The Hound retorted. "Sainter," Jon said quietly. "Arm yourself, and Barristan, stay with me." The two men were surprised, but followed orders. Clegane unsheathed the great sword, and Selmy kept a hand on the pommel of his blade. Jon motioned for silence and reached out with the ravens to look for anything unusual. Ghost detected the scent first, a whiff of mint that wafted past the kitchens and storerooms into the castle. They found the interlopers cloaked in the green and brown roughspun of farmers and hunters near the stairs. One man, shorter than the others, held a knife to the throat of a blond boy. "Baelish," Jon yelled. The slender man turned, the Valyrian dagger still poised to cut Jurian's throat. His guards drew swords and fanned out in a half-circle around their master. "Jon Snow, risen from the dead. How unfortunate," Littlefinger drawled. "My lord, he is here to steal the elixir," Jurian gasped. A thin line of blood dripped from his neck. "Joffrey sent you to kill me, not steal medicine," Jon said. "Who says I can't do both? I have to thank you, Snow. Your elixir will command more gold than my wildest dreams, and I have a wonderful imagination. Unhand a boy." Yaime carried a long sword in two hands, the naked blade resting lightly on the right shoulder. It was an awkward pose, but Jon had no doubt the Lannister knight could unleash a whirlwind attack, just like he did at the Whispering Wood. "I thought we were allies, we served the crown. I am no ally of yours. You used me to lure Snow out, and you set fire to the bathhouse." James snapped back. "Surrender, Baelish. You are a blackguard who would risk the lives of women and children for your schemes. You can't hope to win against us in battle," Barristan said. "Do you ever tire of being smug and noble? Exile has not improved you, Saxley." The Saxleys replied, "4 men cannot beat the 3 of you. You and Saxley are reputedly the greatest knights of the land, and the Hound is a brute. But what about 40? Are 40 men enough?" More men poured into the corridor. Jon saw the glint of mail under the drab cloaks and patched breeches. Some carried swords and knives, but the smarter ones used spears that would give them enough reach to offset their relative lack of skill. "Hand over the elixir, and I will let you live." Baelish smirked, as his Sal's words and free riders surrounded them. Jon laughed. "You are a bad liar, Littlefinger. It is astounding that you fooled so many. But then again, kings sitting on thrones are often fools. We are not. You cannot afford to let us live. You set fire to the bathhouse. Sir Garland will kill you. He will hunt down your men and hang them if they are lucky. Prince Oberyn will torture them if they are not. You are all dead men walking. It is only a question of when and how. All men die, but I have the upper hand now," Baelish said. "No, you do not. Your attempt to kill me 10 days ago took me by surprise. This time is different." Jon held a hand up. A faint rustle could be heard, and then a low gurgling croak that grew shriller and harsher. Dark shapes swarmed the air, and black wings thumped together in a loud knocking call as ravens swirled over their heads. Now, Arya. The dire wolves emerged from the shadows. Nymeria growled and snarled while Ghost stayed by Arya's side, guarding her flanks. Then the ravens, flying with one mind, dived and attacked, biting and stabbing at the sellswords. One particularly vicious bird swooped down and plunged a long curved beak into the whoremonger's right eye. Baelish screamed in pain and the raven cawed in triumph, wrenching the eyeball away like a trophy. The other birds, maddened by the bloody sight, pressed the attack, beaks, wings, and talons, harassed Littlefinger's men who tried desperately to fend off the birds. That was a grave error. The sellswords were densely packed and more likely to strike each other than the ravens. Worse, the unified wall of spears and swords collapsed. The hound, flanked by Barristan and Jaime, smashed through the enemy line in a deadly wedge. The dire wolves ripped out throats and bit at shoulders and flanks. The wood floor grew slippery with blood as the fight quickly became every man for themselves. Baelish, still moaning from the loss of an eye, dropped the knife, allowing Jerion to scurry away. He reached into a pouch and tossed a clay jar at Jon. Baelish missed, but the jar smashed against a wall and a murky green liquid flowed out. Then it burst into flames. "Jon, look out!" Arya yelled. Vasily hurled another canister, this time at the scrum of fighters. Barristan caught it on a shield, now dripping with green goop. With one smooth motion, Barristan threw the shield like a discus, knocking down several free riders. The iron edge sparked, and emerald flames lit up cloaks and hoods. A sellsword on fire screamed and ran for the hall, leaving a burning trail behind. "Wildfire? Why does it have to be wildfire?" Jaime said with disgust as he cut down more men. "Baelish can't have many jars. He only has one pouch. He would be mad to carry more without a satchel or bag," Barristan said. "Milord, the casks, Jerry cried. Baelish's men delivered barrels of food and drink for the feast. "How much wildfire did they bring? And where are those casks now?" Jon said. Sandor Clegane slammed the flat of his sword into the face of a stocky gray-haired man, breaking the already squashed nose. With his left hand, the hound grabbed the throat and squeezed, choking Lothar Brune. "What is the answer?" "A dozen. The wildfire's in a dozen barrels." The sellsword gasped. The hound stabbed through Brune's chest with the greatsword. "We are fucked, unless Baelish tells us exactly which barrels. Wait, where is that cocksucker?" In the chaos, Littlefinger had run away, but not before dashing another jar on the floor. Green flames flickered against the wood. Jon knew the real explosion came when the heat made the liquid expand. By now, the sellswords had all fled, leaving a score of dead and dying bodies. Screams came from the hall, and Jon could smell the sweet, pungent aroma of wildfire drifting through the castle. It might even be a pleasant odor if not for the fear of an inferno. "We have to go," Jon announced calmly. "Barristan, Jaime, Sandor, we need to get everyone out. The tower will go up in minutes. The top priority is to save as many as possible. Tell the servants and anyone remaining to escape immediately. Jerry, find the other Wintertown boys. Take what medicine we can." Chet dashed into the passageway. "Lord Snow, there is wildfire on the floor of the Great Hall." "I know, we need to leave now. Save lives. Grab elixir. Forget everything else," Jon said. The ravens squawked and flew for the windows. The wolves jumped over the flames, making certain not to catch any green substance on their paws. The knights and the hound followed Jon and Arya out to the Great Hall. Men, women, and children streamed out of the burning tower. The little birds helped the sickly off their beds and carried them out in crude litters. The servants abandoned the feast, leaving the pies, roasts, and desserts to cook in greater heat than planned. Jaime, Barristan, and Clegane helped the Wintertown boys rescue the elixir, while the few guards did their best to maintain a semblance of order. The evacuation went surprisingly well, and a dirty Arya, her face smeared with soot, sat down next to her brother and the dire wolves. "If I ever see Littlefinger again, I am going to kill that fucker," Clegane said, gulping down a wineskin. Despite their silence, Barristan and Jaime clearly agreed. Jon stood up abruptly. "Garland's boy, the babe is still in the solar." Smoke billowed out the windows. The tower was lit up with red, yellow, orange, and a sinister green. A mysterious hissing could be heard through the doors, but whether that was water boiling over or stones cracking from heat or ghosts crying out for mercy, no one could say. "There is no hope. The hall and corridors are on fire. The steps to the solar will be blocked. We do not know how much wildfire is left to burn." Barristan said, "There is always hope," Jon said. "I will not let the child die, if there is any chance." "Jon!" Arya cried, realizing what was about to happen. "Stay here, sister. Keep the others safe." Her brother walked back into the tower. Payer Baelish staggered into the hold of the Merlin King, clutching his ruined eye socket. How had everything gone so awry? He did not expect Jaime a Lannister, but 40 sellswords were enough to kill and capture a few men. Everyone in King's Landing had heard stories that Snow was a sorcerer who summoned wolves and ravens to hunt down his foes. Baelish dismissed the tales as so much claptrap until the birds swooped down and pecked out his eye. All was not lost. If a few of his men survived, the galley could sail to Gulltown. The news would not have reached the Vale. The Eyrie sat on the giant's lance, thousands of feet above the valley. No army without dragons could take the fortress or the three-way stations, overlooking the path carved into the mountain. He could hole up and then slip away across the narrow sea. Baelish had ample gold and silver deposited in the banks of the free cities. A steady rapping broke his thoughts. The pattern was not the pre-arranged code, but Littlefinger needed to know how many hirelings survived. "Lothar, is that you?" The door opened, and a man with shiny straight hair of white and red walked through. "A man is not Lothar Brune, but I doubt he survived." "Who are you?" Baelish backed away. The elegant figure switched to a dialect of bastard Valyrian. "A man of Bravos. You know why I have come. The Iron Bank dislikes thieves. They frown on those who kill their envoys." "I can pay you. Gold, silver, gems. Anything you want? I have 10,000 dragons with me, and much more in the Vale. You know our sayings, the Iron Bank will have its due. All men must die, Pettier Baelish." Jaqen Shura stepped forth and cut 2 slits on both sides of the jugular, severing the veins with great precision. Baelish was unconscious, but not dead, when the assassin finished the job, slicing through the neck and letting the head bleed out on the floor. Arya lost track of time. She remembered yelling, but the hoarse voice did not even sound like it came from her body. The dire wolves stayed at her side, a somber Nymeria and a silent ghost. She took some comfort in their company, as the 3 of them stared into the blaze. The Tyrells and Mortells had returned. Both the highborn and the small folk gaped at Florian's tower, the flames licking at the walls. Unlike White Sword Tower, there was no great collapse, but stones crashed, wood warped, and smoke rose to the sky. Sometimes a roar could be heard, accompanied often by a boom, and Arya guessed that the many fires had ignited an untapped cache of wildfire. The barrels must not be full, or the green liquid had been stuffed as clay jars into the casks. "Wildfire, was this Snow's work?" Lyanna asked. Barristan shook his head no. Beatrice tried to steal the elixir with his thugs. They'd already delivered the barrels of wildfire into the hall for the feast. Snow took out Baelish's eye with a raven, but the cunt ran away. He threw a couple jars at us, and the fire began to spread. The hound said, "He must have used it at the bathhouse. We could not put out the flames for a very long time. We are lucky that no one was seriously hurt." Sir Balor said, "Water does nothing to wildfire." Oberyn brooded. Littlefinger used very little of the substance, just enough to cause a diversion. But did he mean to kill all of us? Or just the ones in the tower? "My child? Where is my child?" Leonette sobbed. Ruzier came out of her daze. "Jon went back to the tower to rescue your boy. He must be mad to go back." Olenna stared at the dancing flames. "Jon may survive, if anyone can," Elleris said. "The inside of the tower is an inferno. Wildfire burns incredibly hot," Oberyn said. When a one-eared black Tom sprang from the rubble, bolting to Ghost. The cat yowled and hissed, claws almost scratching the white wolf on the nose. Ghost stood up alertly and made his way to the tower, accompanied by the Tom. Nymeria hesitated but joined her brother. "Clear the door," Arya shouted. "Clear the door." "It is no use, girl. I am sorry for your loss, but nothing could survive these flames," Olenna said. Garland ignored his grandmother. Clegane, Barristan, and Jaime joined the Tyrell Knight as they hooked long poles about hot fragments of wood, stone, and iron. The Wintertown boys rushed to help, bringing shovels and carts to take away the debris. In minutes they reached the charred door, gnarled by the fire, with a bundle of staves ripped from the wagons to make a crude battering ram. Garland and the others pushed the entrance open. The heat of the hall was incredible. A shape moved through the hazy hot air, and Arya knew then that everything would be fine. Jon Snow passed through the door, cradling a small wrapped bundle. His clothes were torn and seared. His hair had been singed, and embers clung to his skin. Arya almost laughed at the scorched eyebrows. Her brother was unburnt. The crowd was stunned into silence. Then a baby's wail broke the quiet, greedy for milk after waking up in the cold air. The sun was setting over the Bay of Crabs. "Lady Lynette, I soaked the blanket with water. The child came to no harm." Jon handed the bundle over. The babe poked his head out and sought his mother's teats. "What about you?" Arya asked. "I am unharmed as well, sister." Jon shook off the cinders and ash. "Snow, you do not burn," an amazed Baelor Hightower said. "Snow is not the name my mother gave me, nor my father either. My true name is Daemon Targaryen, son of Prince Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. I am blood of the dragon." There were moments in Arya's life when the world seemed to stand still. At the Sept of Baelor, she had closed her eyes when Elend Payne beheaded Ned Stark on Joffrey's order. Yoren, the sour old recruiter from the Night's Watch, blocked her view of the pulpit, so Arya only heard a dim noise, as if the thousands packed in the plaza held their breath and let out a long, soft sigh. At the Crossroads Inn, time slowed down when the three dire wolves burst through the doors and windows. She had wept tears of relief to be reunited with northern forces, led by her brother. Now Jon announced that he was not her brother, but a cousin, the son of Lyanna and Rhaegar. Rhaegar Targaryen was no longer the last dragon. The sun set over the Bay of Crabs, the last rays of yellow and red shining on darkened waters. The air grew cold and the wind died. Green tongues of flames flickered but without wind and warmth. The wildfire began to dwindle, the walls stood, but the inside of Florian's tower was burned and blackened beyond repair. They had managed to rescue everyone, the servants and the sick, leaving behind only the bodies of Baelish's men. A soft and insistent cry broke the silence. "You should feed the child, my lady," Jon said gently. Lyanna Tyrell shook off her stupor and stammered. "Yes, Lord Snow, I mean, your grace." Galen offered his green cloak with 2 golden roses to shield the mother and child. "How do we know that is the truth?" Olenna Tyrell asked. "Grandmother," he walked through fire without burning. Garland said. "Yes, but how do we know that you are the child of Prince Rhaegar, and not a dragon seed? There were 2 royal children, not 3. Olenna continued, "My father and mother were married on the Isle of Faces." "What proof is there?" House Baratheon claimed that the Crown Prince abducted Lyanna Stark. That was why the North joined the rebellion. Barristan stepped forth. "Prince Rhaegar loved his lady Lyanna. He told the 3 of us, Sir Jonathor, Prince Lewin and myself, before the Battle of the Trident. He meant to bring Lyanna back to King's Landing and give her a crown. Brandon and Rickard Stark's deaths were for naught. Rhaegar had no quarrel with the North. It would have been nice to tell us about this then, and not 17 years and 2 kings later," Olenna snapped. "The Knights of the King's Guard are sworn to keep the King's secrets. Rosier died at the Ruby Ford. We did not know that Lyanna carried the prince's child. He must have entrusted the White Bull, Oswald, Wint, and Arthur Dane with the secret and your safety." Barristan said, "The Septons and House Lannister might challenge the marriage, but Lyanna had been protected by Lord Commander Gerald Hightower and 2 other White Cloaks. The presence of 3 of Rhaegar's best knights would weigh heavily in Jon's favor among the highborn and small folk. How can this be? How can you live when Axlia and her children died? The gods are cruel. Rosier shamed my sister and abandoned Axlia and Rosier." Oberyn cried. "Rhaegar had his faults, but he loved his children. Aerys held them hostage to ensure the loyalty of my father, Andoran, to the Iron Throne. I mourn the deaths of Princess Aelia, Iacan, and Rhaenys too. They were my family," Jon said. "Words are wind. What do you care about my niece and nephew? They died before you were born." Oberyn raged. "Balerion," Jon called. The black cat glared at the Martells, both ears, one torn and one whole, twitching as if the old Tom was about to pounce. "You remember him, don't you? Rhaenys loved showing her kitten to you. Balerion was there when she was murdered. You were not." "But how?" a bewildered Oberyn asked. "That was so long ago. How could the cat survive? And where did you find him?" "I found him in the tunnels of the Red Keep." Rezielich told me what she said. "Uncle, this is my dragon." You smiled and claimed the kitten was the Black Dread reborn, but he wasn't. Much to her sorrow. A cat is a willful beast, but not as much as a dragon. Oberyn reeled in shock. Those were her words, and that was my reply. Yaxlia gifted Rhaenys the kitten for her 3rd name day. I see her in my dreams. We were to be wed on my 18th name day in the great sept before our families. I was Prince of Summer Hall, and Rainseas was the daughter of the sun. She could draw me from my solitude, laugh at my faults, and kiss away my hurts. When I was wounded from the crossbow bolt, she came and showed me 3 visions. What was Rains like, Jon? Aliras asked. Fierce, proud, strong, a true Targaryen. We would have been happily wed. She told me that we would have had 2 beautiful children. A boy and girl, dragon riders both, but that can never be. She died, Jon said. Is she happy in the afterlife? Is she with her loved ones? Elaria Sand probed. She loves me and we are apart, but she is with her family. If Rosians and Aegon are not in heaven, then heaven is unworthy of the name, and the Faith and the Seven can all go to hell. One day we will be united, but until then, I have much to do. Jon made ready to leave with Ghost at his side. The Wintertown boys grabbed long poles and staves, preparing to enter the tower and see what, if anything, could be salvaged. Before they departed, Sir Jaime bent down on one knee and laid his sword on the grass. What are you doing, Kinslayer? Lady Olenna said. Jaime ignored her and spoke directly to Jon. Before Rhaegar departed King's Landing, he charged me with keeping Akia Martell and his children safe. You failed. You were too busy killing the king and sitting your arse on the Iron Throne to guard my sister and her children. Oberyn said bitterly, I never thought they would be hurt in the sack. I swore an oath to protect Rhaegar's children. You are his last child and heir. I offer you my sword to shield your back. If you do not accept, then I offer my head as penance for failing your father. Jaime said, Sir Jaime, you are a Kingsguard. You swore an oath to the Iron Throne for a white cloak. Joffrey Baratheon is your king, Brienne said. Joffrey has no rightful claim. House Baratheon usurped the Iron Throne, and Joffrey is not even a Baratheon. Barristan said, a Targaryen prince outranks Robert, let alone children that may not be his. Prince Racket was the rightful king. And yet, you served his killer for 15 years, such loyalty. Oberyn snarked. Her brother took up the sword, slightly wet from the grass. The scabbard glittered with golden lions and red rubies, and the long pommel ended in a roaring golden lion head with ruby eyes that shone like stars. He unsheathed the sword, revealing a dark gray blade, the metal tinted crimson to honor House Lannister. It was a fine weapon, Arya thought, forged from the best steel into clean, sharp lines and capable of deadly thrusts, slices, and cuts. Jon inspected the sword carefully, before resting the blade at Jaime's neck. Urziera held her breath. Jon could kill the Kingslayer with a single blow, or accept him into service. In the end, he did neither. After some thought, Jon placed the blade back into the sheath and held the longsword by the scabbard in his right hand. Why do you want to serve me? Jon asked. To be a knight, to keep my promise to Prince Rhaegar, to do what is right and just. You want to be a good man? Then be a good man. You don't need to swear oaths to me for that. Honor your vows, Sir Jaime. Which vows? I have made vows to 3 kings. I have sworn oaths to my family, the gods, the Kingsguard, and the Iron Throne. Obey your house. Obey your father. Obey the gods. Obey the king. What if the king is mad and the gods are cruel? Jaime asked. You are a knight, Sura. What are the most important duties of a knight? Have you forgotten your first vows? In the name of the warrior, to be brave. In the name of the father, to be just. In the name of the mother, to defend the young and innocent. Go back to those words. They are the ones that matter, Jon said. The Kingslayer has forsaken his vows before, Nymeria Sand said. So have others, Jon said sharply. Tell me, Seared, how many knights serve House Lannister? Thousands, Jaime answered. And just as many knights hail from the Reach, the Vale, and the Stormlands. But none of them were willing to fight Gregor Clegane. He was a monster, a rapist, a murderer, a beast in human flesh. No knight would bring the mountain to justice, Jon said. I wanted to kill the fucker, but I never got the chance, the hound lamented. You are not a knight, Clegane. Neither am I. I killed the mountain by burning him alive. I had help. He gave a slight nod to Arya, the hound, and Brienne. Knights did not avenge Elia, Aegon, and Rhaenys. When did you know that you are a Targaryen? Alaraz asked. I knew for certain in the Riverlands, That is why I sent Amory Lorch to Sunspear. I hope he died as painfully as Gregor. Jon turned back to the kneeling man. You say you want to be a true knight. Let your deeds match your words. I have done questionable things. All men have, you have sinned more than most. What's past is prologue. No man or woman can erase the past, but we can choose our future. The measure of a man is deeds, not words. I cannot grant absolution for your crimes, heir. The Septons claim the faith can, but they lie just like other men. Salvation lies within. Rise. Jaime Lannister stood, taller and broader than her brother, but there was no question who was vassal, and who was king. Everyone present deferred to Jon, even the hot-headed Oberyn and the sharp-tongued Olenna. He turned again to leave. Where are you going? Olenna asked. I came south to help Lady Lynette. I stayed to cure the plague. I am going to finish the task. Sorry, Garland. Find Petter Baelish. That should not be hard, as he is missing an eye. I have more important things to do. Jon went back into the ruined tower. Nymeria kept the highborn away. The dire wolf rested by Arya as she watched the Wintertown boys erect a pavilion halfway between the tower and the old plow inn. The structure was simple. Stout, reinforced poles dug into the ground, holding up a wooden trellis roof, nailed together. Guy ropes attached to iron pegs secured large sheets of cowhide and goatskin. The makeshift tent had no doors or windows and would suffer in a storm, but the closed roof trapped the heat, and the leather panels offered protection against dust, wind, and rain. Jon could have opted for greater comfort. Baelor Hightower was not the only knight or lord who had been willing to lend a tent. The Reach had an unending supply of tourney-worthy pavilions of different shapes and colors. Most were made of stiff cotton canvas, but the finest had walls of green silk. Jon had declined the offers, asking only for candles to work into the night. The sick had been moved to the old plow inn. The small folk and servants were scattered around town, some returning to the castle and others staying at alehouses near the gates. The Wintertown boys commandeered cabins of wood and undressed stone near the harbor, when they were not combing through the ashes. At last Jon left the tower. Arya noted that very little had been salvaged. Guards set up a tight cordon around the pavilion. Only Ghost and Baelor accompanied Jon into the tent. When she saw the candlelight, Argier walked in through the flap, giving Brienne and the Hound a brief nod. Her brother's frown lightened when he saw her. We lost much of what we bought from the north. The near eye, the journals, and the equipment were destroyed in the fire, Jon said. Does that mean we can't produce more elixir? Arya asked. He shook his head. Not without barrels and tubes that can be replaced, but it will take time, and the glass is impossible to make here. At least most of the elixir was saved, Arya said. And many lives in the tower, no one died from the wildfire. That is better than what happened to the Lannisters in King's Landing. Jon, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell me? It was a hard thing to admit the truth, even to myself. I always wanted to be a Stark. Before I left Winterfell, I would have been happy to be Robb's captain of the guards. In Old Town, I dreamt of Valyria. At first, I thought that was normal. The Freehold was the greatest empire that ever lived, and invented much of note. But then something changed. I saw the desolation, the eruption of the 14 flames, hurling molten rock high into the air, and clouds raining down dragonglass. I dreamt of the doom many, many times. Was it awful? Arya asked. Yes and no. There is a terrible beauty in destruction. The sea boiled and smoked, the earth shattered, and a mist of fire and ash covered all the land. The visions of the doom are harrowing. They must be, otherwise the Targaryens would not flee on the word of a young girl. That was how I knew. I have dragon dreams. I knew that you were a Targaryen. I saw you at the Twins, Jon. You took the crown of winter from Grey Wind's head. You didn't burn then. Why didn't you say anything? Jon asked, bemused. She bit her lip. I was afraid. I thought you might be angry or abandon us. He reached over and covered her hand with his. One day I may leave, but I will never abandon you. We are family. But you are not a Stark anymore. I was never a Stark. I was a Snow, and now I am a Targaryen. You are still my sister, Argier. Just like Robb will always be my brother, that will not change. But things must change, Jon. You have the strongest claim to the Iron Throne. The Martells and Tyrells will try to use you in their plots. Why did you tell them? The truth does not stay buried forever. What do people say of my father, Ned Stark? That he died after confessing treason at the Sept of Baelor. Ned Stark was not my father. He kept me alive and treated me as well as he could. Rhaegar Targaryen was my father. What do they say about Rhaegar? He started the rebellion by kidnapping Lyanna Stark, Arya said. They say more than that. They say that he was a mad beast that stole and raped Lady Lyanna. Rhaegar was nothing like that. That was a lie, spread by the Baratheons and accepted for 17 years. Some people knew the truth but never said a word. That's why you told them your name. Arya realized, I do not care what others say or think about me, but my parents are a different matter. They were foolish, but they loved each other. My father was no rapist, and my mother died bearing me. Let the world remember them as they were, and not the false story told by the Iron Throne. Ned Stark knew the truth, but participated in the lie. I want no more lies. He wanted to bury the past. The rebellion was over, and thousands had died. He wanted to protect you. Yes, by blackening the name of my father and erasing the memory of my mother. Ned Stark placed Robert on the throne. The warmonger king told everyone of his great love for Lyanna Stark, even though he fathered a bastard in the Vale. You know her? Newstone. She was born 2 years before the rebellion. That was very long ago, Eir said in a small voice. I don't care if they killed your brother and sister, destroyed your house, and stripped you of your name. Would it matter how many years had passed? The rebellion was built on a lie. The world should know the truth. Let Rhaenyra and Lyanna's ghosts hang over the Iron Throne, and show that the Lannisters and Baratheons have no rightful claim. What will you do, Jon? Will you marry a Tyrell or a Martell to take the crown? The words of my house are fire and blood, not marry others for armies I do not trust. My father relied on the Reach and Dorne in the rebellion. They failed him. I won't make the same blunder of trusting mates Tyrell and Dorne Martell. When I attack, I will be ready, with fire and blood. Arya would have pressed further, but Nymeria sniffed the air and growled. A moment later, an awkward rap came from outside the tent. An apologetic little bird entered through the flaps. "My Lord, your grace, a man asks to see you." He says it is important. Everybody believes that their needs come first. "Who is it?" Jon said. "Jaqenegar." Olenna waited until the babe had been placed down in a cradle by Lady Lynette. Balabar and Lomius determined that Snow spoke the truth. Garland's son had been entirely unharmed by the fire in the tower. The infant had eaten well, laughing and smiling as the maids and ladies cooed. The knights and lords of the Reach were less at ease, trying to come to grips with the secrets revealed tonight. The Game of Thrones had changed. She sipped a cup of rosehip tea, while the servants set out platters of bacon and beef pies, and a tray of honey-roasted ham, dripping over a stale trencher of brown bread. The modest supper was accompanied by hot bread, cheese, and apples. There was no wine or music. Olenna wanted the heads in the pavilion to be unclouded by drink. The Fossaways sat down to eat with Garland and his wife. Lamez came back from the ruined tower with a few other disciples. Olenna glared at the Fossaway boy. "Did you know that Jon was a Targaryen?" Owen wiped away the mustard and beef gravy from his mouth. "How could I possibly have known that?" "We had no idea," Yaxley, Sabir Baelor's nephew, said. "I met Snow soon after he arrived in Old Town. He sailed on a derelict ship with no guards or escorts. I would not risk my steward on such a trip, let alone a Targaryen prince. At the Citadel, he excelled at every subject and link, but that is not a sign of a dragon." Owen piped up. He was interested in ancient Valyria. He read every scroll about the Doom. Jon wanted to examine the glass candles. I worried that he would steal them from the vault. Olenna sighed. Lord Stark was known for honor and not cleverness. He was Robert Baratheon's truest friend. Yet he had hidden the existence of the Targaryen heir in plain sight. All the clues were there. An infant born in Dorne, a dead sister, a bastard raised at Winterfell, and Snow burned men alive. Bolton at Harrenhal, the mountain in King's Landing, and all of House Frey. They had been deceived by Ned Stark. The gods enjoyed their little japes. Sir Bergerler entered the pavilion, dragging a salt and pepper-haired man with a golden hoop on the right ear. The face had been badly beaten, and a large wet spot on the garishly bright pantaloons explained the smell of piss. "Who is that?" Garland asked. "Luco Castan, captain of the Merling King, Littlefinger's ship. Baelor wrenched the man's head up by his greasy hair. "Tell them." "I am only an errand boy, my lord," the captain blubbered. Baelish paid off the debts on the galley to the Iron Bank. "He told me to be ready to sail when he gave the signal." "And what did he plan to do at the tower?" Baelor said coldly, "Burn it down. That would make the elixir even more valuable." By Jace wanted to steal it all and destroy any way to produce more. The Merlin King would sail to Pentos and Tyros. Both cities are suffering from the plague, and the Magisters and Archon would pay a fortune. "My child was in the tower," Garland growled. "I didn't know, my lord. I just do what I am told. We found a headless corpse in the hold of the Merlin King. We believe it is Baelish." "It is, my lord," the captain said eagerly. "He wears a silver mockingbird pin on his cloak." "Could it be a trick? Littlefinger is clever. He might fake his death?" Jon Fossoway asked. Tonight did not go well for his plans. The Hound says Baelish lost an eye to a raven. It would be incredible if he hid a dead body in a pool of blood as a diversion, Baelor said. "Let's hope it is Baelish, but who killed him?" Olenna said. "We don't know. His sellswords are all dead from the assault on the tower. They were disguised as plague doctors in King's Landing." Baelor ordered a guard to take the prisoner away. "Should we give Castiane to Prince Daemon?" "Is he a prince or a king, uncle?" Axlian asked. "That depends on how quickly Joffrey loses the Iron Throne." "Joffrey is still king," Mainster Lomas said cautiously. "Jon Snow may be a Targaryen, but there is no record of the marriage." "That doesn't matter," Baelor snorted. "A child of Prince Rhaegar defeated Tywin and cured the plague. Who would choose the Kingslayer's bastard as king? We know what Joffrey is, a cruel and stupid boy and a Lannister on both sides. The lions are weak. Men believe what they wish. They will flock to Snow's banner if he declares for the Iron Throne." "I believe that is right, Lady Olenna," Jon Fossoway said soberly. "We should make certain that Snow does not become our enemy. With Baelish dead, the Vale's loyalty is uncertain. Ned Stark had many friends among the Vale Lords. We do not want to fight the North and the Vale. Why would we fight Jon? He has been good to the Reach. He freed the prisoners at the Twins. He saved me from the plague. He saved my child 3 times, and he is the only way the plague will be stopped in Old Town," Lyanna said. "We are allied with the Lannisters. Margaery is to marry Joffrey soon." Olenna replied, "Grandmother, we should break the engagement. Owen was right. A betrothal to Jon Snow would have served Highgarden better. Joffrey's reign will not last." Garland said, "It is not so simple. I received a raven from Allery a few days ago." Olenna said, "The Lancers have taken Margaery and Mace to the Maiden Vault." "Are they prisoners?" Garland asked. "No, but they must stay in the castle and are watched closely. The imp claims they are honored guests of the Iron Throne." "Hostages?" Baelor spat. "Yes, and the lions also threaten harm to Loras should Highgarden break the alliance. Loras, as Kingsguard, cannot leave Joffrey." "What a mess," Garland said. "We are in a difficult spot. Margaery cannot leave the Red Keep. Without her, we can make no alliance with Daemon Targaryen. Things will get worse when the Iron Throne knows of Jon Snow's true parentage. It is not just the crown. Everyone will hear about the marriage of Lady Lyanna and Rhaegar. Jon Snow is the rightful heir. What will the other kingdoms do?" Baelor asked. Olenna went silent like the others in the pavilion. Quite honestly, she did not know. The Lorathi placed the leather satchel down on the grass before handing over 2 blades, a slender sword and a slim dirk, to Brienne and the Hound. Both weapons had a slight curve, but Jon had no doubt the faceless man could kill with a thrust or any number of other ways. The Lorathi gave Clegane an amused smile before entering the pavilion with the bag. Jon dismissed the guards, leaving only Adjet and himself with the 2 dire wolves. He pushed forth the wooden board holding a round braided loaf, a salt cellar and silver spoon, both enameled with the salmon of House Mouton, rested in the hollow. Jaqen T'Kor tore off a piece and dipped it into the salt. Jon followed suit, savoring the sweet and slightly sour dense bread. "The man hears that you are a Targaryen prince," Jaqen said. "My brother is the rightful king of Westeros," Yarya said. "Is he? Where is his crown or throne?" Jaqen smiled. "I have none now, but things may change. Why did you ask to speak with me?" Jon asked. "You took out Baelish's right eye. I have his left." "Did you capture Littlefinger?" Arya asked. Ghost tugged gently at Jon's hand. He reached out through his bond. The white wolf had picked up a scent, earthy and metallic, but mixed with fear. In a forest, a dire wolf could smell blood from half a mile away, even through a leather bag. "You killed Baelish." The faceless man opened the satchel, revealing the severed head of the former master of coin and lord protector of the Vale. In death, Littlefinger's smirk was replaced with an open-mouthed scream. Jon noted that the cut across the neck was clean, and the blood had been drained well. Terror could be seen in the one remaining eye. He would have run. "I found him in the harbor on the Merling King. He meant to sail away." "You did not find him. You already knew where Baxley was. You tracked him to Maidenpool. Who hired you to kill him?" Jon asked. "A man cannot say. It couldn't have been the Lannisters. They would kill Baelish in King's Landing. And the Tyrells and Martells seem to have no idea about Littlefinger," Arya said. "A girl may ask. The House of Black and White does not reveal secrets without payment, not even to princes and kings." "And what would be sufficient payment?" Jon asked. "The elixir, the cure to the plague. You asked for that when Baelish was alive. Now he is dead. Enough elixir for Braavos is a high price for only a name," Jon replied. "Secrets can be worth a great deal. Braavos was a secret for 111 years, to escape the wrath of the dragons. And Braavos can help you, Daemon Targaryen. The Iron Bank has ties to the crown, since the reign of Jaehaerys the Old. You would do well to consult them before you attempt to overthrow the Lannisters. You would be wise to not make them a foe." "How can a bank in Braavos threaten Jon?" Arya asked. "The Iron Bank can make and unmake kings. There's a reason Braavos is the richest of all the free cities," Jaqen said. Jon thought there were many reasons why Braavos was powerful. One of them stood in the tent. The maesters long suspected the faceless men of murdering rivals to the Iron Bank. He had no doubt the tales were embellished, but these were dangerous men. "I will give you my answer tomorrow," Jon said. Jaqen H'ghar raised a slender, unpainted eyebrow. "Will it satisfy the Iron Bank? My goal is not to please others, it is to cure the plague. You will see soon enough." Jon woke up, refreshed, but hungry. He always slept better with Ghost next to him, and he realized with a tinge of guilt that Ghost, unlike Nymeria, had not hunted last night. He scratched the shaggy pale white fur about the neck. The dire wolf's garnet red eyes glinted in the light. Jon followed the gaze to the barrels of elixir stacked in one corner. It was time to end this. Time to move on. Outside the pavilion, the servants lit fires and drew water from the springs. The sculleries and kitchens of Florian's tower were ruined, but men still needed to eat. He walked north past gawking small folk. A few tried to kneel, but most were too busy with their tasks. At the stone wall that separated the town from the harbor, Jon counted a dozen masts. Although some of the ships were too small to cross the narrow sea, that would have to be enough. The Wintertown boys had purchased a freshly caught tuna and carried it back on a small wagon. Rather than make a stew, they hacked up the giant fish and roasted rough-cut chunks splashed with salt, lemon, and oil over a grill of coals and hot stones. A rickety table held the products of their labor: hot fish on leftover bread, accompanied by jugs of watered-down wine. Jon fed a tuna steak to Ghost, and Balerion devoured a smaller fillet. Jon ate the bread dipped in wine with the fish drippings. Better food than the Citadel. Yalara's cut a large sliver with a knife. She squeezed the juice of a blood orange onto the fish and threw a large morsel at the black cat. That is not saying much. Boiled mutton, apples, and cider that Owen claimed was vinegar. That was your choice. Had there been any hint of your parentage, the Tyrells would have feasted you at Highgarden. You would be fatter than Mace Tyrell. Alirez replied. Jon chuckled. He had only seen Olenna's son briefly at King's Landing. The Lord of Highgarden was a large man. How is your father taking the news? He is still in shock. It is hard to come to grips with the past. He was very close to his sister. They were only born a year apart, and 10 years after Uncle Doran. Oberyn, even though he was younger, felt responsible for her, given Odiad's health. Father hates Tywin far more, but he still blames Rhaegar for her death. He bears you no ill will, but he will not call the banners against the Iron Throne. Jon finished her words. It is not my father's decision. Prince Doran rules Sunspear, and he is a cautious, careful man. Uncle Doran enjoys his plots. He claims to be working for Tywin's downfall, but he accepted a betrothal between Marcella Baratheon and my cousin Trystane. He would certainly demand that you take his daughter, Arianne, as queen. Alirez said, What is she like? Tell me the truth. Willful. Bold. In time, she might make a good ruler. But now, Arianne is more rash than wise. She took the wrong lessons from Uncle Doran, I am afraid. She believes in action, while Doran enjoys subtlety. She clashes often with her father. That does not sound promising. What did you expect? No alliance will be perfect. Arianne may enjoy adventure and excitement too much, but she is Dornish. Her blood runs hot. That is not my concern. I have to negotiate with both Prince Doran and Princess Arianne. Oberyn has no power to bind his niece in marriage, and Sunspear is far away. I do not have the time to go to Doran to meet Arianne and wait for an army to be mustered. So you will marry the Rose of Highgarden instead? Yavarus asked. They have not offered, and I have not asked. Despite her sharp tongue, Olenna may not be able to make a betrothal without speaking to Marjorie or her father. Mace Tyrell may be an oaf, but he is still Lord of Highgarden. Strange, I would think the Tyders would rush to your side. If Ser Gerlin was the head of House Tyrell, it might be different. Margaery is already engaged to the king. I would have to take the throne, and the northern army is far away. Allarez shook her head. They are wrong. I have seen Joffrey in King's Landing. When you burnt the Red Keep, he cowered in fear. He insults his bannermen. He is greedy for power. He won't listen to anyone. Not Cersei, the Kingslayer, or Lord Tywin. The longer he sits on the Iron Throne, the weaker the Lannisters will become. You are certain of this? Jon asked. Yes. He is going to be a very bad king. He is cruel but not clever. His best hope would be to hide behind his grandfather's skirts, but he is too proud to do that. In less than 2 years, Joffrey will come of age and have the power to replace the small council. Mark my words. Joffrey is quite skillful at making enemies. Even terrible kings can rule for a long time. Baelor, Maegor, Arius. Aegon, the unworthy, stayed on the throne for 12 years, and his reign ended only because he was so fat that he could not walk. It makes you wonder how he fathered so many bastards, Jon said. Those kings were all Targaryens. They never had a Targaryen attempting to overthrow them. Your true name is Daemon, correct? The first Daemon started the Dance of Dragons to put his wife on the throne. Daemon did not start the dance. Aegon the Second stole the crown. He murdered men loyal to Rhaenyra, and his brother Aemond killed her second son. Lucerys was 13 years old. The death of Rhaenyra's son truly began the war. Before, there was some chance that envoys and marriage pacts might satisfy the two sides. After Lucerys died, Prince Daemon hired killers to murder Aegon's children. It was not the finest moment for House Targaryen. What will you do, Jon? Will you set Westeros in flames? She asked. Walk my own path. I share the same name as the Rogue Prince, but we are different men. Besides the tuna steaks, breakfast was a modest affair. Cheese, olives, salted fish, and overly ripe apples and plums completed the simple meal. To his surprise, much of the fish remained, and a servant hovered over the carcass, shooing away flies and cats from the succulent pink flesh. The young girl gave Balerion a fearful glance as they approached. Where are the others? Jon asked. Chet and Jerion were absent, and the small folk who had tended the mold were missing. They are helping the Tyrells, your grace. The girl almost tripped, trying to curtsy. The Tyrells? With what? The nice fat lady. Begging your pardon. Lady Lyanna. She still wants a feast for her baby. The tavern wenches and ostlers say she will pay a silver stag for a beef and bacon pie. At that price, every house in Maidenpool would fire up the ovens. Jon shuddered, thinking of the wretched fare at the Stinking Goose. The village taverns were not known for the quality of food, but the fire burnt down the supplies of meat. Yes, your grace, but with silver more can be found. My brothers are hunting rabbits, and there are goats and pigs that can be killed early. The Tyrells loved their food, but then the reach was quite fertile, bursting with fruit and grain. The riverlands were bountiful as well, and had it not been for the fire, the feast would have been splendid. Eat your fill. Jon handed her a seared piece of tuna. And when you are done, go find the others and tell them to come. Milord, please don't be angry. Glady and them only wanted to earn some coins. Earns well. We all thought you didn't need us anymore. I am not angry. I am happy for Lyanette and her child. If the lady desires a feast, then she should have one. But there are tasks that must be done. I have coins too. These are for you. Jon pressed 5 silver stags into the small hand. There is more for the others. Now, after you finish, bring them to me. All the Wintertown boys, the little birds, and the elixir maids. They came quickly from all parts of Maidenpool, the docks, the commons, and the taverns. Jon measured out and handed over a large quantity of silver stags. He explained what he wanted. There were no questions, no doubts, no confusion. Chet and a few others fanned out to the taverns close to the harbor. Jerry sat down in the pavilion, with the boys able to read and write. Wintertown boys gathered ravens, parchment, and quills. Frances and some village girls measured out the elixir into smaller bottles and casks. A few left with messages for the Tyrells and Martells. Even after the tasks were allotted, a large passel of children remained, awaiting instruction. Jon decided to give Lady Lyanna a hand with the feast. The bathhouse at Jonquil's pool still stood, but the stone was scorched, blackened, and charred. Even a few vials of wildfire had done great damage, as the substance unaffected by the water burned any cloth, wood, leather, and iron the flames encountered. Jon advised the Holy Sisters to wait several days so that the springs could flush away the ash and debris. In return, the faith allowed him to use the entrance of the bathhouse. The arched doorway opened into a long chamber, lit up by sunlight coming through the high windows. The faint smell of smoke had almost faded from servants washing the room that morning. Men loyal to Sir Garland and Sir Balor lined up at the grey walls while Brienne made awkward banter with Barristan and Jaime. The Hound paced back and forth, keeping watch over the chairs placed in the first rows. Only a few were occupied, and many eyes watched those being escorted to those seats. "Do you think they will come?" Abby asked. "I don't see why not." Jon had explained the entire plan to his sister. She bit her lip, raised a few questions, but gave him his full support. Besides Ghost, he could always depend on Ardea. She glanced at the crowd. 3 men sat uncomfortably at the front. A fair-haired Lysiag with a red satin doublet, a weathered graybeard with a black tricorn hat, and a Tyroshi with dyed green whiskers. "We are missing 9 of them. These are sea captains. On their ships, they would be up at the crack of dawn. Here on land, with nothing to do, they spent their nights drinking bad rum, telling tall tales, and singing sea shanties. We're lucky they woke up before noon." "Jacket is here as well," Arya said. The Lorathi was hidden in the shadows between the Reach and the Martells. Haikar's grey robe peeked out from behind the green cloaks of Lady Olenna's massive twin guards. "He wasn't invited, but I suppose that has never bothered faceless men," Jon quipped. The chairs began to fill up. A summer islander with a feathered cloak of green and yellow sat next to a dusky-skinned sailor from Sarnor. A nervous Braavosi with a gold earring shrank into the background, and a slender trader from Old Town rubbed shoulders with a squat-legged hairy Ibonese. He did not know whether the 2 other olive-skinned men were from Myr, Volantis, or further east. The final 2 men, hailing from Driftmark in Blackwater Bay, sat down. He stood up and addressed the captains. "Do you know my name?" "We thought you were Jon Snow," the man from Light said, "but it seems that you are a dragon." "And do you know what I have done?" "You cured the plague," the Old Town trader said. "And not like Payer Baelish's mountebanks and false doctors. Your elixir works. You hail from many ports. They say the plague is raging in the free cities and beyond. What would the Magisters and Archons do if your ship was the first to sail into harbor with the cure to the disease?" The old man with the black hat and gray beard answered first. "Showers and coins. The cure is worth its weight in gold. The ship that carried the elixir would be remembered forever." "Gold? Ha! The cure to the plague is worth more than that. Jewels, saffron, silk. Kings would empty their treasuries. Lice would open their pillow houses to your crew. A captain might become a prince." The Lysini man said. "How would they greet the second ship to sail into port with the cure?" Jon continued. "With joy and delight, the captain would be welcomed by the rulers and given valuable gifts. His ship would have the choice of the best trade goods. Cedar from Quhor, spices from Volantis, ivory, ebony, tiger wood. Such a trip would be profitable indeed." The Braavosi said. "And what about the third ship?" Jon asked. "Bad wine and free food at the taverns. The whores might give you a tumble as thanks. You'd have to watch your purse, though," the Old Town trader said. "How is that different from the usual voyage?" The Tyroshi roared in laughter. The summer islander stood up, resplendent in his fine feathered cloak. "What does this mean, Prince Daemon?" Will you allow us to sell elixir in your name? Jon looked over the eager sea captains. Not sell. I will give you the elixir to be carried in my name, and something more important. The way of making the cure. The Maester has set down the process for creating the elixir. We have scribed it many times this morning. There are more scrolls to be prepared, with a sample of the mold, a cask of medicine, and the instructions. A skilled healer will be able to produce elixir. Chet said. The secrets of the elixir will be given for free, the elder brother of the Quiet Isle said. The tall healer with a shaved head, veined nose, and thick jaw looked overcome. Not secrets. The cure will not be secret for much longer. It would be best to hurry. The first ship to arrive at a port will reap enormous rewards. The second and third much less so, Jon said. This is madness. Why give it away? Olenna asked. Because this is the plague. The plague does not die. It hides. It lurks in shadows and alleys, in slums and middens, until it sends out rats, fleas, and other vermin to spread the disease once again. What will you do if the plague reemerges when I am no longer here? He is right. In Westeros, sicknesses come and go. But in Essos, where there is greater trade, a plague often lingers. In Korth, the plague reappeared 4 times in 10 years. The so-called Queen of Cities never recovered, Oberyn said. The elixir is worth 1,000,000 gold dragons, and that is only the beginning, Olenna said. I know what the cure is worth. Barzillai showed all of us that when he tried to steal it, I only need gold for 2 things. To provision an army and to develop a land. Before I came south, I was rebuilding the north with roads, dams, farms, and mills. I have enough gold for that. Your Grace, the gray-bearded captain spoke up. He had a weary look, like someone who had seen too much and sailed for too long. Would we be allowed to visit 2 cities? What is your name? And which cities are you thinking of? Gruel of the Sea Shrike. My home is in Pentos, but I must return to Meereen. Both suffer from the plague. They are dying in the streets. Women, children, and the old man choked. Visit as many cities as you would like. Pentos, Tyros, Lys, Volantis, and further east in Essos. Go far and wide with the cure. Or go near. Old Town, Sunspear, King's Landing. You cannot send the elixir to King's Landing. Olenna said sharply. Why not? Jon asked. The Queen of Thorns glared at Jaime Lannister. Tell him, Kingslayer. Tell him the truth. The knight opened his mouth, but no words came out. Tell me what? You obviously know as well, Lady Olenna. Jon said with a touch of annoyance. We believe Tywin Lannister has contracted the plague. He hasn't been seen for weeks. Oberyn stood up. Our spies have not seen either Joffrey or Tywin since we left King's Landing, but they may simply be hiding from the plague. Lord Tywin has not called a meeting of the Small Council in a month. The man enjoys lording over everyone. Why would he hide from Mace? Olenna snapped. Sir Yame, what do you know of this? Jon said. The Lannister knight squirmed under the scrutiny of the crowd. Then he set his lip in a grim line. It is true. My father fell ill before I left King's Landing. The Maesters think he may recover, but they do not know. I've had no news from the Red Keep. If Tywin died, we would know. The Lannisters would be hard-pressed to keep it a secret. The Septons would be summoned for funeral rites. But if he recovered, then Tywin would hold court. With the pestilence raging, the hand of the king must be seen to rule. Oberyn said. Jon's mouth twitched violently as he thought for a long moment. The room went silent as both the Queen of Thorns and Oberyn Martell waited for a response. It doesn't matter. The cure will be sent to King's Landing, Prince Daemon, Baelor Hightower said. The elixir might save Tywin's life. 500,000 people live in King's Landing. How many are women and children? I despise Tywin Lannister. If he was on fire, I would not piss on him, to extinguish the flames. But I will not allow tens of thousands to die for one man. Jon said. Men die in war. So do women and children. You cannot force Joffrey off the Iron Throne without shedding blood. Baelor said. This is not war. This is the plague. In war, soldiers know that death waits for them. They are ready to kill and be killed. Men in battle are not the same as women and children dying in their beds. Your family knows the horrors of disease, Sword Baelor. 70 years ago, the Grey Death struck Old Town. Half the city perished, along with most of the acolytes in the Citadel. I have read accounts of the great plagues of Essos, how the epidemic, like a thief in the night, snuck through walls to ravage cities and ruin towns. Death fell on houses, large and small, rich and poor, so that servants and masters fell dead at the same time. Whole villages perished, and towers filled with corpses in a tangled heap. The dead lay in piles like hay in a stack, and the bodies were trodden upon and trampled by those attempting to escape. The frail, the young, and the poor could not flee. The stranger came for them all. This is madness, Olenna said. The Lannisters will not care about your mercy. Joffrey sent Confronting Baelish to kill you, let Tywin recover, and he will plot and scheme. He will find more Walder Freys. The Iron Throne will not rest until you are dead. House Frey is extinct. I don't fear the lions or the Iron Throne. Right now, my desire is to banish the plague from the earth. It is within my power to do so. It may be that other pestilences rise in the future, but this one ends now. I thought that you would take back your throne with fire and blood. Azir Sokkan the Conqueror would not lift up his enemies. Jackarax forgave Makarat's supporters, but only after he was crowned. Why not be like them? Olenna asked. There is truth in her words. With the cure, you only need a small army to march on King's Landing. A siege would be bloody and ugly, but with the plague you would win. Beaxley Seer. How would I win? By catapulting plague-infested bodies over the walls, by driving the sick and dying into the Red Keep. I will do neither of these things, Jon said. You are a Targaryen. Your family's history is conquest. No Targaryen cared how much blood was shed for victory. Aegon killed thousands to unite the Seven Kingdoms. The burning of Harrenhal was his message to the houses of Westeros, Olenna said. Not all Targaryens lusted for blood. Jaehaerys fought no wars, Oberyn said. Only because his uncle conveniently died, had Manger lived, that statement would not be true. Jaehaerys would have been another Daemon and been known as a kinslayer. Olenna retorted, I am not Aegiad, Jaxlier, or the first Daemon. All three had dragons. If I had a dragon, the war would have ended at the Red Fork. I will not use disease as a weapon in battle. I came south to cure the plague, not spread it further. Jon said. Kindness is a double-edged sword. Your mercy may be a danger to all of us. Olenna complained. Jon held up his hand. Am I your king? The question hung in the air over everyone in the chamber. If I am king, then all of you are sworn to follow my orders. But if I am not king, then none of you have dominion over me. I have paid my debt in full. It is my decision on what to do with the elixir and how to deal with the plague. He turned to the Wintertown boys. When will the scrolls be ready? Chet answered crisply, Your Grace, by tomorrow noon, the scrolls will be finished and sealed. Jon addressed the captains directly. Prepare your ships to sail by the morning. Ravens will deliver the news to the castles and ports of the Seven Kingdoms. Carry the elixir and scrolls to cities on both sides of the narrow sea. I expect only one thing in return. Tell them my name, Daemon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Tell them that the cure is my gift. I thought you would be more ruthless. A conqueror rather than a maester. Olenna said, You could end the Lannisters now. Hurl the lions off the Iron Throne. In one blow, you would end everything Tywin has ever built. Oberyn said, Those are the things that you want. I have no responsibility to live up to what others expect me to be. That is your mistake, not my failing. My path is my own. With that parting shot, Jon departed the room. Like the fair lady in a tale of Florian the Fool, Maidenpool woke from her slumber. The town rose, not to honeyed words of love, but the bustle of wagons and the shouting of captains. The docks were redolent with the powerful and pungent odor of tar, as the crews caulked hulls, repaired masts, and coated sails. Quartermasters and first mates scoured Maidenpool for any provisions, food and water, but also candles, firewood, brooms, buckets, rope, pots and pans. Arya was amazed at how much rope a ship required. The harbor was not the only busy place in town. Well-rested horses were stabled near the Fool's Gate, ready to take the elixir by land. King's Landing was one obvious destination, but there were many others. Ser Balor would ride again to Harroway and dispatch soldiers along the river road and the Trident. The elder brother of the Quiet Isle would spread the news to Crownland septries along the Duskendale Road. Fossaway and Oakhart Knights planned to hurry down the King's Road and turn west on the Rose Road. At Tumbleton, they would sail the Mander River to bring the elixir to Highgarden, alerting the castles and towns on the way. In all likelihood, the Reach Knights would make it to Old Town quicker than the Sea Strider, a merchant cog hired to make haste to the High Tower. In the hurly-burly, Arya managed to slip away from the guards. Ever since the fire in Florian's tower, Brienne watched her like a hawk, worried that Littlefinger might return. Arya did not mention the severed head resting in a leather sack in the northern pavilion. Sitting on the pink stone wall, she watched as casks of salt beef and crates of hardtack were loaded on the Swan ship. A slender girl of perhaps 20 name days, with long braided hair and smooth skin of polished teak, gave orders to the crew in both the summer and common tongue. Impressive. Maidenpool's as busy as Ragman's harbor. Jaqen Markar wore a heavy gray cloak and carried a stout quarterstaff with a sharp metal tip. The long pole was taller than the faceless man, and doubled as a traveling stick and a dangerous weapon. "Are you going back to Braavos?" Arya asked. "No need. Gulltown and Hull are closer, but those are small ports. The first true destinations will be Braavos to the north or Pentos to the south. They might sail to King's Landing instead." A girl does not understand distances. A man willing to tire many horses can reach King's Landing in a week. It would take longer for a ship to sail around Cracklaw Point into Blackwater Bay. In that time, a ship could reach Braavos and be richly rewarded. The wharves teemed with people. There were experienced sailors and seamen, but also merchants begging for passage and small folk flocking to the cogs. Orja even saw castle guards who had discarded the red salmon sigil of House Mooten in the crowd. Why are so many people eager to join the cruise? The assassin chuckled. Gold can do what kings and gods cannot. Great fortunes will be made on these trips. Captains cannot stop sailors from boasting about their future wealth. Arya bit her lip. Do you think Jon made a mistake? Should he have kept the elixir? Jaqen closed his hands on the staff, taking some time to answer. Had your brother only given away barrels of elixir, that would be an error. Princes would kill for the cure or send armies to do so. As the medicine was used, each dose would become more valuable. But your brother gave away the secrets to the elixir. That changes things. Men know that more can be made. Every sellsword captain, archpriest, magister, and great merchant will expect their rulers to acquire the instructions. At first, the elixir will sell at a high price, but there will be a race to produce more. The healers at the House of Red Hands, the artisans of Myr, the keyholders of the Iron Bank, the old blood of Volantis, they will all try to stockpile what they can. The secrets will spread like wildfire, and the elixir may become available even to the common folk. Jaqen smirked. I wonder how the rulers of the free cities will react. What do you mean, shouldn't they be grateful for a cure? I forget that you don't know much about Essos. In Westeros, there is only the faith with the seven-faced god. But in Essos, we have many gods. In the center of Braavos, there are 100 temples. The Moon Singers, the Lord of Light, the Black Goat, the Dreaming Twins, the Lord of Harmony, the Great Shepherd. These are but a few of the refuges in the Isle of the Gods. When a plague hits, what do priests do? We who serve the many-faced god do not, but others ask for gifts of gold and jewels, even blood sacrifices, to placate the angry gods. So, a perplexed Arya asked. So priests and rulers claim that their piety allows them to intercede with the gods through ritual offerings. Among many, the plague creates a fervent devotion to avoid divine wrath. But it was not prayers that saved the free cities. It is your brother, a lost Targaryen prince. The ancient ways failed. When that happens, kings can fall and new rulers can rise. But Jon has no designs on the free cities. He doesn't care about Pentos or Tyrosh. He only wants to cure the plague, Arya argued. Your brother may have noble intentions, but those in power do not. Besides Braavos, the free cities were colonies of the freehold. Your brother is the heir to the dragons. Men fear what they cannot control. Sometimes that fear turns to worship. Sometimes that turns to hate. Your brother is flesh and blood. The rulers of Essos may strike back at him. Jon won't care. He is not afraid of any magister or priest. A terrible thought struck Arya. Would they hire faceless men? Would they send you to kill him? We are not hirelings. We are servants of the many-faced god. I would not kill your brother. I know him. We are forbidden to give the gift to those we know, but I cannot speak for my order. A girl should know this. The Iron Bank would like to meet your brother. Why, wouldn't they be afraid of him as well? Jaqen chuckled. The Iron Bank fears nothing and no one. They believe they can control anyone, even a dragon. Perhaps the keyholders are right. They have made and unmade kingdoms and peoples. The bank is as old as the city, and their power runs deep on both sides of the narrow sea. All the free cities saw the fall of Valyria. The Browos is richer and more powerful than the other 8 combined. Why is that? In Browos all men must serve, and one of the masters is the Iron Bank. Rizier chewed her lip. If my brother does meet the Iron Bank, will he be safe? The Iron Bank does not kill people. It hires others to do that. Nothing is completely safe in life, sweet girl, and that is doubly true for a Targaryen prince. The raven perched on the gilded cherrywood table, savoring the extra allotment of corn. It was the largest of the 24 birds in the solar thick-necked, with shaggy throat feathers and a sharp knife of a beak. The raven strutted about insolently before its peers, flouting the fierce glare of the black tom. Jon thought the raven was pushing its luck. The only thing that protected the bird from Belion's claws and teeth was the letter attached to the right leg. Having fed their bellies, the birds would depart soon to announce to the 7 kingdoms what Maidenpool already knew. His true name, parentage, and that Daemon Targaryen, rightful heir of Prince Rhaegar, had discovered the cure to the plague. This raven would make the longest trip, over the Vale and the Bight to Winterfell, over 1,000 miles to the north. The other birds would head to castles and towns in the Riverlands and Crownlands, but a few, the hardier ones, would fly to Highgarden, Sunspear, Old Town, and Casterly Rock. No raven was strong enough to cross the narrow sea, but the ships would reach Essos quickly. Jon had moved into Castle Mountain for a few reasons, but mostly for the library. There, on pine tables lit by wax candles, the Wintertown boys transcribed the process for fermenting and extracting the elixir. It was quite a good thing that Jerry and Chet had taught so many others how to read and write. Jon's wounded arm made it difficult to do more than scrawl a single letter. The crew, aided by Owen, Aelin, and Alirez, were hard at work scribing scrolls. A tall shadow fell on the door, the pommel of the great sword hanging over the right shoulder. Jon turned away from the window overlooking Maidenpool. "What is it, Clegane?" The hound poked his scarred face through. A crowd of highborn outside. "Did you tell them I was working?" Jon said. "I told them to go fuck off, but they refused. They keep asking for an audience." Ghost sniffed the air and turned to Jon, nuzzling his side. He rubbed the white wolf's ears fondly. "I suppose nobles never listen. Who is out there?" "The Tyrells, Barristan, Edric Dane, the Mutin girl, Dondarrion. Should I go on?" Jon shook his head. "Tell Lady Eleanor that her father is free to leave the tower. She and her brothers have behaved well, so her family will come to no harm. Tell Edric and Lord Beric I will find them later. I will see the Tyrells first, and then Sir Barristan." Lyanna and Garland entered the solar, leaving their guards and knights behind. Garland took a knee and his wife curtsied. A difficult thing given the child swaddled in her arms. "There's no need. Rise." The couple had come alone. The Queen of Thorns was no doubt busy plotting and scheming how best to advance her family's interests. Jon had no quarrel with Olenna, but she was best experienced in small doses. "Your Grace, we wanted to thank you for everything." Garland said. "Is that the position of House Tyrell?" Jon asked dryly. "I am not the head of the house," Garland said apologetically. "My father is Lord of Highgarden. Even my grandmother has only so much sway. My brother, sister, and both my parents are in the Red Keep. We cannot declare for you. That troubles me, given all you have done for our boy. If I could, I—" "Stop, sir. I did not save the babe to gain your loyalty. One has nothing to do with the other. Too many children die too young. That is true, no matter what their names are. Your Grace, you saved our son 3 times. Lyanna cradled the infant gently in blankets of green and gold roses. "We want to honor you with the name of our son." He raised one eyebrow. "Jon seems too plain a name for a Tyrell, and Daemon has its own connotations. Daemon Targaryen and Daemon Blackfire were great men, but I doubt you want your son to follow in their footsteps." "Not Daemon, Harlan Tyrell, the second of his name." Garland said, "The first Harlan bent the knee to Aegon. After the King of the Reach died in the Field of Fire, Harlan, High Steward of the Reach, yielded Highgarden without a fight. For that, he was elevated to Lord Paramount of the Manor, still a point of contention to houses like the Rowans, Tarleys, and Florence. That will displease the Iron Throne. Joffrey will not know our history. I doubt he is much of a reader, Garland said. The Lannisters would. I appreciate the sentiment. Has your grandmother agreed to the name? She doesn't know. It is our choice to show that we are loyal, that if we could, our family would fight for the dragons. One day, we hope that Harlan can bend the knee to his rightful king. Harlan is not yet a week old. He won't be bending the knee to anyone. Jon stroked the baby's face lightly, eliciting a sleepy smile. The first Harlan died in the sands of Dorne with his army, fighting for Aegon. I do not want that, nor do I wish to pit you against your family. I ask only that your son grows up to be a good man, just wise and brave, that would honor the name. The child gave a soft coo, twisting slightly toward his mother. A smiling Lyanna rubbed Harlan's back gently. Do you still intend to have a feast? Jon asked. We would like to, but provisions are quite scarce. Not much meat, very few spices. Little fruit. The pantries, butteries, and larders in Maidenpool have run dry, Gerlin lamented. Leave that to me. Tell your men that we will celebrate Harlan's birth tonight. As Jon dismissed the Tyrells, the old knight entered Solar. Barristan Salmi stood tall and proud in a full-plate sans helmet. The hair was white and face-lined, but the knight looked every bit as graceful as the hero that earned a white cloak in the War of the Ninepenny Kings. Despite the absence of a squire, the gray armor was polished to a mirror shine, and the afternoon sunlight glinted off the breastplate and pauldrons. Barristan dropped to one knee. Rise, sir, Jon said, in a kindly tone. I doubt that you are able to declare for me. The knight stood up. Your grace, I did not know of your existence. The secret had to be kept from Robert Baratheon. Jon motioned to the ebony chair. Sit down. I asked the Wintertown boys to investigate your presence in Maidenpool. You arrived in the Sea Shrike a fortnight ago. The ship sailed out of Pentos, but Groleo says he must return to Meereen. The sailors say Daenerys Targaryen is in Meereen. That makes sense. Joffrey stripped you of the white cloak, and you did not join Rensley Baratheon. It is unlikely you joined Stannis, given that you sailed from Essos. Do you serve my aunt? The knight nodded. I pledged my sword to Daenerys Targaryen. She is queen of Meereen. The plague struck the city, and your aunt sent me here to find a cure. How did she know? Meereen is very far away. I do not understand exactly. A witch from Ashai gave her a candle, and somehow the queen saw something in the flames. Barristan said. A Valyrian candle. I should have tried to light the three at the Citadel, Jon said softly, almost to himself. The magic must be strong in her. The ancient dragon lords could see across great distances and have visions of the past and future. Obsidian is a strange thing to make into a candle. It melts only at the temperature of iron. Queen Daenerys has magic. She hatched 3 dragons in the Red Waste. I was not there, but her Dothraki followers tell the tale. Barristan said, Magic is in the blood, both my aunt and mine. It always has been since the Valyrians tamed the dragons. Where did you meet my aunt? In Cart, she left after burning the House of the Undying. I traveled with her to Slaver's Bay. Slaver's Bay is a miserable place. Why does she not come to Westeros? Queen Daenerys conquered Astapor, Yunkai, and Meereen to free the slaves. She stays in Essos to rule Slaver's Bay. You said she is queen of Meereen, not Slaver's Bay. Jon noticed the uncomfortable look on Barristan's face. What happened to the other cities? Does my aunt control them? All the cities are troubled and slavery has returned to Astapor and Yunkai. The Guskari are sly and debased, false to your face and eager to plunge a knife into your back. Buying, breeding, training, and trading slaves are all they know. Have you told Daenerys this? A shadow passed over Jon's face at Barristan's reluctance. Is my aunt a good ruler? She has a good heart, your grace. She freed the slaves. She is more Rhaega's sister than Aerys' daughter. It is not her fault. You did not answer my question, Jon interrupted. Is she a good ruler? Yes or no? Barristan winced. She may become one, but right now, she is too young and untried. She is surrounded by enemies. The queen is a liberator amidst a sea of slavers. Jon sighed. In the dream, Erosles charged him with restoring the name of House Targaryen. Nothing worthwhile came easily. Sir Barristan, I wish to know the truth. You do your queen no good by concealing things. I want to know, for better and worse, her triumphs and failures. Do not mislead me. It will not serve Daenerys well. Besides, I have ways of finding out. How will you do that? Simple. Graelio is a crew on the Sea Shrike, a jug of wine, a pretty wench, a few stags, and sailors spill everything they know. Tell me everything about my aunt. Barristan did. Jon listened intently to the old knight's words. As a knight of the Reach, Sir Garland had attended dozens and dozens of feasts. There had been harvest festivals, weddings, betrothals, tourneys, holy days of the Seven. Highgarden enjoyed showcasing their fabled bounty, a display applauded and much imitated by bannermen. This feast at Castle Mooton would be a strange affair. The presence of a Targaryen prince was a great honor for his son, but then Garland wondered about the provisions or lack thereof. Harlan Tyrell, Lady Olenna hissed, and you invited House Martell to his feast? That is the name we chose, Lyanna said stubbornly. We know that Dorne and the Reach have some history, but... Some history? The sigil of the Martells should be a scorpion. They killed the first King Daeron under a peace banner. They murdered 2 heads of House Tyrell in Dorne. One of them was named Harlan. That was a long time ago. Dorne has been part of the Iron Throne for a century, Gertline said. The Martells will behave at the feast. To do otherwise would be an insult to House Targaryen. Owen Fossaway said, You should know your history. Dorne has no problem with insulting dragons. But I suppose no one wants to cross this Targaryen. After all, he is quite mad, Olenna said. Grandmother, Garland pleaded. Snow is mad. Who would save their enemies from the plague? Who in their right mind would give away the means of making the elixir? Prince Daemon is a great man, Lady Olenna. The people will love him, Lyanna said. People, the Queen of Thorns snorted in disgust. Will that give Snow gold? Swords? Will it force the Lannisters out of King's Landing? Crowns are won by armies and alliances, not gifts. The love of people lasts as long as a fart in the wind. Jon didn't give away the cure to be popular. He did it to end the plague. As for the Lannisters, I doubt they will sleep well when the ravens arrive, Owen said. No, they won't. Some maesters claim that madness and greatness are sides of the same coin. They say when a Targaryen is born, the gods toss a coin and the world holds its breath to see how it lands. This one landed on its edge, and the gods are still waiting. The Tyrells entered the brightly lit feast hall. A place of honor had been made for the infant, a handsome wooden cradle placed in front of the high table, where Garland and his wife would sit with Snow. A thick woolen blanket lined the crib, 2 golden roses on green, the Tyrell knight's personal sigil as a second son. A thinner sheet lay on top, the red apple of Cider Hall. The knights and lords from the Reach sat at long trestle tables on the sides of the grey hall. Jon Snow stood up as they approached. The Tyrell bannermen banged their mugs and cheered heartily. Those at the high table were less spirited, but Garland hardly expected exuberance from Prince Oberyn or Sir Jaime. Sir Barristan was there as well, and Elaria and the Sand Snakes. What a darling child. What is his name? Lady Eleanor asked. The 13-year-old was the only Mooton who dared to stand near Snow. She had been accepted by the Northmen. Harlan Tyrell, Garland announced proudly. Interesting name. Oberyn said, Does the boy plan to spend time in Dorne? Are you threatening my great-grandson? Olenna snapped. My prince is making a bad jape. Children are welcome at Sunspear, Elaria said. So long as he is not marching an army past the prince's pass, Oberyn quipped. Harlan is a good name, Snow said. We are gathered here tonight to celebrate. The ravens are already flying to every corner of Westeros. Soon enough, the truth of Rhaegar and Lyanna will be known by the Iron Throne and everyone else. Then there will be ample time to quarrel and squabble. Tonight, let us just enjoy a feast in Harlan's name. And what feast will that be, Your Grace? Bread? Beans? And then more bread? Olenna said. Unfortunately, there is some truth to that. The fire burned the meat and the spices. Bread, cheese, peas, onions, and eggs will not make much of a feast, Garland said. We will see. Chet, have them bring the food in. The Wintertown boy rang a bell. At the sound, servants wheeled in wagons loaded with bubbling cauldrons. A large, doughy man with a soiled apron ladled bowls of soup, the pungent yet sweet aroma wafting through the hall. Square chunks of bread floated on a hot yellow sea. The Queen of Thorns sniffed. What is this? Roasted garlic soup, the fat man said. Garlic bread, wine, chicken broth, and we cooked a few eggs at the last moment. Before Olenna could make more comments, Arya Stark blew on her piping hot bowl, and then slurped a large spoonful. It is good, she said, despite the full mouth. The cook's nervous face broke into a smile. Garland followed suit. The soup was sweet and creamy with no sharp edge to the garlic. He broke the egg, the yolk running over the bread. There was a faint hint of ham, but he could see none in the bowl or cauldron. Garland took a bite of yolk, garlic oil, and soaked bread, and the mixture warmed him up from the inside out. Even without meat or spices, the garlic soup was delicious. What else have you made? Jon asked. Roast cooked with beef broth, onions, butter, and white wine, your grace. We mix the rice with the broth until it is well absorbed and creamy. They say the true dish comes with saffron, but there is none to be had in Maidenpool. Saffron costs a fortune everywhere. A pound can cost more than a horse, and not one of the miserable beasts in the Riverlands, but a well-bred sand steed. Oberyn said, I am sorry, my king, we have none. The cook clasped his hands in shame. There is no need to apologize. What else do we have? Roasted onions and gravy, toasted bread brushed with garlic and oil with tomatoes, strawberry jam and grape jelly on sliced bread, and a special treat. The cook took off the lid from a plate, revealing fried balls of meat, each the size of a small stone. Servants brought several platters to every table, and the rich smell wafted through the hall. But how? How did you find so much meat? Leonette asked. It is not all meat, my lady. The meatball has breadcrumbs, sheep's milk, eggs, cheese, garlic, and onions. We use bread dipped in milk to stretch out the meat. Rowena stabbed a small meatball. There is more bread than meat here, and quite a bit of cheese. This food is fit for small folk, not highborn. Pardon, my lady, if you wish, there is a goose in the yard. I could catch it and roast the bird over a fire.
No,
Snow said, his voice carrying so that all at the high table could hear. You have done well, good man. You served the best you had, and for that, I thank you. The dishes are tasty. Olenna said begrudgingly, but an heir to Highgarden deserves a more lavish feast. So does a man who would be king. What do I need splendor and pomp for? This food is nourishing and good enough for my people, those who followed me from Winterfell. I eat what they eat. When the North fought in the Riverlands, I lived no better than the Wintertown boys. I got no more rest than my men. Many nights I stayed awake on watch so others could sleep. My well-being is not more important than theirs. Let others covet riches and comfort. If you care so little about such things, then why do you want to be king? Lyanna asked, Wealth holds little interest to me, nor fame. One thing does matter, my name. For 17 years, Westeros shat on the dragons, smeared my father's memory, erased my mother's existence. I intend to restore my ancestors back to their rightful place. Where is that? On the Iron Throne? Oberyn asked. Rosier and Lyanna cannot sit on the throne. I want more than a melted chair. I cannot bring them back to life, but I will restore their honor. They died for me, and I will not let them be forgotten. My house and the glory of Valyria will come again. Valyria was destroyed in the Doom. The Empire fell to the whims of the gods. That might have been for the best. Life under the dragons was not some paradise. Oberyn said. What was life like before the dragons? Was it better under Old Guinness, who built their cities and pyramids with slaves? Before the conquest, kings fought over disputed lands. The North with the Vale, the Lannisters with the Reach with Dorne, the Stormlands with everyone. Black Heron was a thief who beggared his people, and a pirate who raided the North, the Reach, and the Westerlands. Life has never been perfect. Men have always fought each other for power and lands. That will not change. The gods must be entertained by our suffering. Oberyn said. Then we should get new gods, ones that will accept a better world and not just for the highborn, Jon said. The Faith will be overjoyed to hear that. The Queen of Thorns' quip broke the tension. You are bold, Prince Daemon, but you will need armies, allies, and gold. Even then, you may fail. I do not doubt that my path will be hard. So what? Failure is not the worst thing in life. There are worse ways to die than fighting for what is right. And yes, I do need allies, but I will decide the right time and place. Is that why you sent the captains to Essos? Alleras asked shrewdly. Are you looking for support in the free cities? It is possible, Jon admitted. But I am satisfied with curing the plague. And one more thing. Lord Beric, tell them my orders. The Lightning Lord, a slender man with a patch over one eye, stood and spoke in a rasping voice. Your Grace, you gave me Petyr Baelish's head in a sack to bring to the Vale. So Littlefinger is dead. Good riddance, Olenna said. There are many Littlefingers in this world. Killing one rat does not destroy the nest. Others will replace him, Oberyn said. Then I will burn down the nest. Baelish committed crimes that deserved death. So did the mountain. The world needs to be a better place. The crimes of the past must be punished. Old sins cast long shadows. Darkness can be erased by light. Jon said, There are always shadows when there is light. Life is a mix of light and shadow, Alleras said. Some sins are better buried than exposed. Not when those sins are the murders of my brother and sister. The Baratheon claim to the crown rests on butchered children. Ned Stark ignored the crime. He blamed Tywin but not Robert, who benefited most from the crime. Jon Arryn averted his eyes. My family died in the rebellion, not yours. I will set the 7 kingdoms on fire before I let anyone forget. The story of my house is not done. Maidenpool was silent in the hour of the ghosts. The tap rooms of the inns were empty, and the captains rousted the crew out of the Stinking Goose and other seedy wine sinks to prepare for their journeys. The next day, the Tyrells and Martells had long retired, although an excitable Harlan, perhaps stirred from that night's feast, woke up to be fed by his half-awake mother. Sarah Garland, happy with wife and child, slept like a log. Had he been awake, Garland would have seen lights flicker in the hour of the owl. By torchlight, candles, and moonlight, the Wintertown boys, the little birds, and the northern guards worked swiftly and quietly. Tents were rolled up, papers were packed, and a few last provisions secured as Manderley men hoisted the rectangular sail of the Wolf Wind. In the hour of the Wolf, still 2 hours before sunrise, the cog departed, traveling light and fast into the Bay of Crabs. It would take a week to arrive at White Harbor. A few stayed behind to ensure the orderly distribution of the scrolls in elixir and to fulfill other tasks. Jon had spoken to each of them personally, to explain their duties and give further instructions. He regretted not saying goodbye to the other acolytes, but that would have attracted more attention. Owen and Alleras would understand. His work in the Crown Lands was done. The pink stone walls of the harbor receded. Ghost and Nymeria slept in the cabin with Arya. Balerion was in the hold, hunting rats. The Hound took the first watch, and the captain scanned the dark waters with a far eye, making certain they were not followed. They did not need to worry. All was quiet on board, and in the bay. Jon turned his eyes east. A thick, dark plume billowed from the summit, staining the pink and purple sky. Steam bubbling from the hot vents on the flanks blurred the air, so that, in the morning from the rookery, Dragonmont appeared to be a mirage of salt and smoke, the slopes obscured by white and gray clouds. The mountain was no illusion, though. Heat radiated from the underground shafts, and whiffs of sulfur and brimstone escaped the caverns, an evil wind blowing out to the sea. Shireen Baratheon had grown up in the shadow of the mountain. Dragonmont loomed over Dragonstone, both the castle and the island. Maester Crescent had told her that it was the volcano that attracted the Valyrians. The Freehold raised the citadel as their westernmost outpost, using dragonflame and sorcery to work the stone hewn from the mountain. Dragons, both wild and tamed, had made their lair here, but nothing else grew. No crops could be tilled, and livestock fared poorly on a smoking rock in a great salt sea. Without the fishing village plying the waters of Blackwater Bay, the garrison would have starved. She had never felt comfortable here. Lately, her sense of foreboding had grown. It was not just her father's new loyalists vying for influence or the Red Witch preaching the faith of Rhaegal. Dragonmont was restless. Wisps of smoke turned into plumes, steam hissed as it escaped the ground, and fires rolled down the sides. Cracks swelled up on the slopes, and the air turned hotter and drier. In her dreams, the mountain rumbled, and dragons took to the sky, roaring their challenge to men and gods. The servants and soldiers on Dragonstone attributed the increased activity to the Lord of Light. Melisandre never claimed that Rosier was responsible, but then she never claimed that the Red God was not. The witch could often be seen on Dragonmont, and small folk whispered that she knew secret stairs down to the mountain's heart, where she performed eldritch rituals in honor of her fiery god. Shireen did not know what to think. Crescent claimed that the Valyrian lords might have magic might enough to control a volcano, but not a mummer from Asshai. Crescent was dead, though, killed by the same poison that the Red Witch drank. Shireen! The boy who approached was tall for 13 named days, broad and sturdy with the black hair, deep blue eyes, and the strong jaw of House Baratheon. Is there news, Edric? Edric Storm was Shireen's cousin on both sides. He resembled his father, King Robert, in youth, and his mother was Delena Florent, Shireen's mother's cousin. We are going north. Robb Stark has agreed to give us safe passage to the wall. The boy beamed, resembling nothing more than a large, overly friendly puppy. In a few moons, the cousins had become fast friends, united by the dislike of Queen Sax. She had never forgiven Edric for being fathered on her wedding night and on her bedmate, Delena. Shireen thought the announcement was more than a little strange. Melisandre claimed that she had seen a vision of the Great Other in the flames, and that Stannis, as the Lord of Light's champion, would have to fight at the wall. That was well and good, but did nothing to advance her father's claim to the Iron Throne. Sailing 1,000 miles north would not help them gain allies against Joffrey. It was a sign of the Red Witch's hold over King Stannis, that no one dared to voice the obvious flaws in this plan. Are we sailing to White Harbor? Due to grayscale, she had never traveled much, only seeing Storm's End and King's Landing a few times. That had been many years ago. No, the Starks are building a new town on their eastern rivers. On the Weepwater, Edric scrunched up his face, trying to recall the name. The Weeping Water, the river that flows through Bolton Land and meets the last river. The Vado says White Harbor is a pretty town, but far from the rest of the north. Having a port halfway between White Harbor and Eastwatch by the Sea will help trade. Do you think we will have to face the dire wolves? The knights say that the Stark wolves can rip a man's head clean off and that warhorses flee at the scent. Horses had more sense than her father's knights. Winterfell is granting us passage. Father is meeting with Robb Stark to parley. There is no need for conflict. Edric chewed on those words for a moment. Lord Florent says the Northmen show no love for the king by taking his messenger captive. I hope Davos is unharmed. Alistair Florent was her mother's uncle, with more ambition than loyalty. He would have been happy had the Starks taken Davos's head. Maester Crescent said the Northmen are hard, but fair. There's no sense in bad relations. Whatever Robb Stark thinks about my father, he despises Joffrey and the Lannisters more. What about this Jon Snow, though? They say he burned all the Freys at the Twins. Melisandre is probably burning someone as we speak. Shireen noted wryly. At least Snow had good reasons to burn Walder Frey. He also released the prisoners at the Twins. The wolves may be ruthless, but that does not mean they are cruel. The sound of bells and footsteps came from the outside balcony. Under the sea, under the sea, under the sea. Patches sang as he shuffled in his own queer way to the rookery. The jester wore a tunic of gold and black motley, the colors of House Baratheon before her father placed the royal stag and a red heart in a flaming yellow sun. The new additions to Honor Rosier dwarfed the old sigil. Patches, we are going north to the wall. You had best prepare for the cold. Shireen spoke over the clanging of the cowbells strapped to the antlers of the shabby tin helmet. Do you really need to take the fool? He is quite mad. Edric scratched his head as Patches pranced and twitched, the bells going clang-a-lang. I am the only one he has. If I left him, the servants might not even feed him. They would let him die. Shireen said softly, The shadows come to dance, my lord, dance, my lord, dance, my lord. The shadows come to stay, my lord, stay, my lord, stay, my shadows come to rule, my lord, rule, my lord. Patches hopped from one foot to another and back, shaking his bells. He has lost his mind. What does he mean by shadows? I don't know, but he suffered in the service of our house. Our grandfather, Lord Stephen, found him in Volantis and purchased him from slavery. The ship broke up in Shipbreaker Bay in sight of Storm's End. Both of our fathers watched. Everyone died besides Patchface. They found him 3 days after the wreck, cold and broken. Since then, he sings queer songs, mermaids and smoke, and the sea. I won't abandon him. Very well, my lady. I will follow your lead. Edric smiled. Come on, Patches. Shireen held out her hand. The fool whirled and pointed. Outside the castle, a fire had burst out on Dragonmont. lighting up a few stunted trees that had been barely growing on the slope. The trees had no hope, as the orange flames consumed the small patch, burning, yearning, turning. Tears ran down the tattooed fleshy face. With Edric's help, Shireen gently moved the jester out of the rookery. In a few hours, Stannis and his men boarded the Fury to sail north. Shireen, Edric, and Patches were long gone when the Raven from Maidenpool arrived. Later that night, the new Maester Pylos, a man far younger than the dead and buried Crescent, read the note. By then, King Stannis was out of reach. No amount of polish would help the armor. When he woke, Edric Dane had wiped down and dried the breastplate with rags, buffing and applying oil. In life, Lord Beric enjoyed the color black, riding a black courser and wearing a black satin cloak, decorated with stars. In death, the Lightning Lord no longer cared about appearance. The black steel had turned dull, the forked purple lightning bolt showed cracks, and the 17 white stars were begrimed and shabby. He was no longer Beric Dondarrion's squire. Old habits die hard, though, and Edric had served the Lightning Lord since he had 7 name days. He removed what dirt and rust he could before taking a tray with a rasher of bacon and a soft-boiled egg on yesterday's bread. If Edric noticed a slight smile from the pretty maid, he gave no sign. "My lord," he placed the food on the table in the taproom. "Kind of you, lad, but no need. I have not been hungry since the mountain killed me with a lance." Beric pushed the tray back to Edric. "But he wouldn't say no to a glass of whiskey," Thoris said. The priest was in a jovial mood, having filled his belly considerably in last night's dinner. The whiskey was finished at the feast. Edric cracked open the egg and dipped the burnt bacon into the yolk. The Wintertown boys had been generous with their bottles, betting that drunk highborn would sleep through the departure of the Manderley ship. They were right. "I thought you gave up drinking, old friend," Beric quipped. "A man needs wine and ale to deal with Lyanna Tyrell, particularly when she is angry." A loud rap on the door announced the Tyrells. Edric finished the meal as the 2 7-footers burst into the room. The ostler of the Old Plough Inn raced over, only to be waved off. An irritated Lady Olenna walked ahead of Ser Garland and Ser Buller. Behind her, Edric could see the Sand Snakes, Barristan the Bold, and many sea captains. "Where is he? Where are all the Northmen?" Olenna demanded. "His Grace departed Maidenpool before sunrise," Beric replied. "I can see that. Where did they go?" "North, if you must know. The Wolf Wind is heading to White Harbor." The captains surged forward, unleashing a cacophony of questions. "What about the elixir? Where is the medicine? Will the king keep his promise?" The Lightning Lord held up a pale hand for silence. Daemon Targaryen is a man of his word. Edric knelt down and opened the chest, left to him by the Northmen. The contents were far more valuable than bars of gold, especially a slim journal with names, ships, quantities, and likely destinations. "This is a record of your requests and the king's decisions recorded by the Wintertown boys. I will hand out everything now, the elixir, the molds, and the scrolls. His Grace charges you with getting the cure to the sick in his name." "But why did Snow leave in the night?" Olenna asked. "The king does not need your permission to depart," Pharos said severely. "Why would he stay? Daemon Targaryen has set everything in motion to end the plague." "It is true, my lady." Lomix, the white-haired maester from Highgarden, examined the first scroll. "The written instructions are quite clear. With mold, equipment, and supplies, the Reach can produce plentiful amounts of elixir. We can begin by copying the scrolls. We will send bits and pieces by Raven to make sure there will be barrels and corn ready in all the towns. It will take weeks for the mold to arrive, but the lords and small folk will be gladdened by the news," Owen added. "And the story of the lost Targaryen prince will spread and spread," Olenna snapped. "That was the bargain, grandmother, and it is a very fair one. Think of how much fear and misery the plague has wrought. No one wants children and women dying alone, and men abandoning their families and homes to escape," Garland said. "That is true. That horse has already left the barn." Olenna brightened slightly. "I suppose the Reach will be the first of the 7 kingdoms to produce elixir." "Wouldn't that be the North?" Garland asked. "No, Snow produced the cure in Maidenpool. I doubt he will be making more medicines soon. There are hundreds of maesters at the Citadel. They must be good for something." Olenna turned her eyes to Beric. "What are your plans?" "Tonight we sail across the bay to the Vale. If a galley or cogs will not take us, then we can commission a riverboat or even a skiff. Lady Lysa will not be happy. Besides her sweet Robin, she was strangely enamored with Littlefinger. She will not be pleased to see only his head, Olenna said. We are not going to the Eyrie. There are other houses in the Vale worth seeing. Lords and ladies who will be more receptive to the news of the true king. Olenna Tyrell departed, leaving Garland and Baelor to deal with the Maesters. Beric and Thoros returned to their meal, while the ostler brought out pitchers of watered-down wine. Edric handed out the elixir, mold, and scrolls, leaving a single batch for himself. The captains left without eating or drinking, eager to get back to the ships.